I brought your
girdle the tree.
Where did this come
So,
from?
my purse.
You told me.
all the way around. I'd like to call the meeting of the McHenry County Zoning Board of Appeals to order.
I can't hear what you're saying.
If you can't hear me, I encourage you to move up in the room. We have no microphones in the room. It's recorded in the ceiling, but if you can't hear, just move up. I'm sorry? Oh, I think they did. If you, I'll just remind you, if you think that you might want to speak, if you didn't sign into the sheet when you came in, I would encourage you to do so. So the purpose for our hearing today is application 2024-037. The applicant is Pivot Energy Illinois 78 LLC. The request is for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. The address is 302 Porton Road, Island Lake, Illinois. The property consists of approximately 31.2 acres and is located on the north side of Porton Road and the west side of Roberts Road in Nunda Township, Illinois. There are 3 PIN numbers involved in this petition. They are 15-29-200-053, 15-29-200-043, and 15-29-426-005. At this time, I would like the members of the zoning board to introduce themselves and the township in which they reside, starting on my left.
Robert Cozen, Algonquin Township.
Jessica Beverly, Door Township.
Charlie Eldridge, Richmond Township.
I'm Linnea Kustra in Alden Township.
Vicki Gardner from Nunda Township.
Kurt Schnabel, Riley Township.
Thomas Jers, Coral Township.
This petition has been reviewed and the following items have been received prior to today's scheduled hearing. The publisher's certificate of publication from the newspaper is dated July 5, 2024. The affidavit of posting was signed and the date posted was July 5th, 2024. The affidavit of mailing was signed and the date mailed was July 1st, 2024. All of these meet ordinance requirements. The survey has been checked against the petition, legal notice, and publication in the newspaper, and all 3 match. The filing fees have been paid, the endangered species consultation has been received, and the McHenry County Soil and Water Conservation District report has been received. This is NRI number 24-052-4608. At this time, I would like to recognize the petitioner and the witnesses and any member of the public who thinks they might want to speak today. I would want to swear you in if you were going to ask a question of the petitioner or if you're going to have a comment at some point, I would want to swear you in. So if anyone would like to speak today, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Now, just for the benefit of the public, how the hearing works today is that petitioner will give us a presentation, and it will be for your benefit as well, so you can see what the project entails, what solar farms are, how they work, and then they'll be going through the standards that the county requires of them that they have to meet for this solar farm. So after they give their presentation, then they will be asked questions from the zoning board or from staff. And after that, if you would like to ask a question of their testimony, you will be allowed to do that as well. You'll be given 3 minutes. I have a timer. I ask you to be respectful, to not be repetitive in answering the same questions. And also, I just want to remind you that as of the state statute, the law that was passed in the state of Illinois, we're able to put standards on a solar farm as far as adding conditions to make it more palatable to the neighbors or to concerns of the zoning board, but we are not allowed to turn down a solar farm, but we can add conditions. So after that testimony is done by the petitioner, the staff will give us their report. And then after that, if you have a comment on the petition, you'll have 3 minutes again that you can give 3 minutes with your comments on this petition. So at this time, I'll turn it over to the petitioner. If you would please introduce yourself and your position with Pivot Energy and go through your presentation, that would be terrific.
Absolutely. I'll stand as long as I can, and then I might need to take a seat. But my name is Brittany Krebsbach. Some of you may remember me. I was back here in December. But I am the Senior Manager of Project Development for Pivot. I will be presenting on Pivot Energy IL78 LLC today. Just as a reminder, Pivot is a developer, owner, and operator of our systems. So we not only develop and design our solar projects, but we also develop and then own them. So that can give you some peace of mind, and you can know that any conditions that you put on today and the things that I talk about, I actually hand off internally to our PTCM teams, who then hands it off to our asset owner teams that maintains it. So usually that helps a little bit. We did present on 3 projects late last year that you all might remember. A lot of information will be repetitive, but of course the public may have not been there, so I will still present it for their benefit, and happy to answer any questions, make any clarifications that are needed. Thank you. So yeah, today we'll be talking about Pivot Energy IL78 LLC. If you can go to the next slide, Kim, I'm sure that you're familiar with that. Perfect. So just to give us a sort of lay of the land, this is right outside the village of Island Lake. We'll be talking about some engagement efforts with the Island Lake community and officials and things later on. But yes, near the nature preserve, near some residences, all things that we will discuss in today's presentation. Next slide. So Pivot Energy 78, as you probably read in the staff report, this property is zoned agricultural. It has been used for that use for many decades at this time. The project boundary itself, I know we talked about how the parcels are 30-ish acres or so, but the project boundary, aka the fence boundary right now as it is 18 acres. To go into some design features specifically, per the state siting bill, we are at least 150 feet from all non-participating close residents. In a lot of cases, we're actually further than that. That dashed line is what you see on the site plan if you've reviewed that. So in a lot of the cases, we're further than 150 feet, but at minimum, our fence line is 150 feet away from those non-participating homes. We're also 50 feet from both public right-of-ways, of course, especially Roberts Road. And we can talk about this in more depth later, but McHenry DOT did ask for 22 feet of additional right-of-way, and we were able to meet that, and that was why the site plan was resubmitted recently. So we are 50 feet even from beyond that new proposed right-of-way. For fencing, just like our other projects, we are designing with an 8-foot egg-style fence. That's kind of that mesh wire with wooden post fencing. We've heard from neighbors of other projects that blends better. It's more appealing to the eye and things like that. So that is what we prefer, and I believe the county prefers it also. With also a minimum 20-foot wide gravel access road, like our other projects. The size of this project, energy output-wise, is 3 megawatts. That would be equivalent to approximately, give or take, just under 900 homes. The project will not require utilities such as sewage, waste, irrigation, water services, things like that, trash and recycling, of course. And we will be interconnecting to the existing lines off of Horton Road to the far south there. Next slide. For technology and equipment, a lot very similar, if not identical, to my last presentation and probably a lot of what you see. So we use Tier 1 bifacial panels, Teal Sun bifacial panels specifically. There'll be approximately 7,500 panels total on site. Those panels are about 12-foot max height. Where they kind of tilt back and forth, that sits at about 5 to 6 feet, so about the height of the top of my head. They are all coated in anti-reflective, anti-glare coating. They're made to absorb sunlight, not reflect it. That is how we, create energy from these systems. So for racking right now, we're designing with a single axis tracker, which tracks with the sun from east to west. Those motors do operate. That's what moves the tracker about 20 minutes total per day, just moving it ever so slightly. I was actually just on site the other week and was having a normal conversation and had one do it right next to me. And it's about the, I would say the noise level of maybe your toaster popping up or something like that. So it really wasn't too disruptive. We just noticed it. That was being right next to it, of course. But again, they only run 20 minutes total in a day, so it's not too bothersome. That racking will be pile driven, so no concrete padding beneath the panels, of course, just for our equipment pad, just that small area. As far as inverters, we do utilize string inverters. There'll be 24 total, split between the 2 equipment pads on site. So not those large central units that produce a lot more noise. The audible noise of those inverters, I took this right from our spec sheet of those 125 watt inverters, and that is about 65 decibels standing 10 feet away from the inverter, which is about similar to your average dishwasher or washing machine. And as you move away, the sound dissipates, so from the property line, you really should not hear it, and especially with that vegetation and things like that, it should not be able to be heard, and they do not run at night, so that is helpful. Like I said, we will connect to the existing lines on Portland Road, and then we'll connect to the nearby substation to the north in Island Lake. In our project, this array itself does not create any pollutions or emissions. It is simply producing clean energy while also enhancing those ecosystem services once that vegetation establishes and can help with runoff, air purification, water purification, and those sorts of things. Next slide, Kim, thank you. So just a little bit closer look at our site plan. These like little dots here, these are where the inverters are that I'm talking about. So, and this dotted line is that 150-foot mark. So really, you know, even from these closest residents here, you're probably approximately 200 feet with some existing vegetation on our parcel itself that we do not have plans to clear. So from their property lines, they really should not be able to hear the system, and they do not run at night. So that is also helpful. And as each neighbor moves further and further away, they, of course, the sound dissipates and you would not be able to hear it. And same for over here. Over here has an even thicker vegetative cover. I've been on site twice now this season, so that is helpful. So just wanted to help lay the land a little bit there.
And they won't be able to see it either because of the vegetation.
I'll talk about screening. That's a little bit more complicated of a topic, so I have a whole slide dedicated to screening. Yes, and we'll see this again. All right, as far as site design, construction, and operation, oh, sorry, next slide, Kim. I switched on mine, but not yours. So again, we're accessing off of Portland Road, and that will be used for construction, operation, utility visits, anything we need to access the site. And of course, per county code, we will obtain a fully executed road use agreement prior to even pulling our building permit so that the county highway engineer or otherwise can have say in how we handle, you know, construction traffic and things like that. Construction should last approximately 6 to 10 months with a system this size, potentially kicking off summer or fall of 2025. Of course, that is a rough estimate. Things can happen in a lot of different processes, especially procurement and things like that. So that is a rough estimate there. The majority of traffic is during that construction timeline. Of course, once we get to operation, you're really only visiting the system a handful of times per year for utility, maintenance, vegetation, other things like that. We have been in contact, you may remember from our last projects with IBEW, the local chapter. Jesse there is a really strong partner of ours. We plan to provide them an opportunity to bid on those previous projects, and as well as this one, we've actually introduced them to the project manager on the previous project, so that relationship is still strong, and we plan to lean into the local economy as much as possible, and we are happy to take any recommendations or bids during that bidding time. For operation, of course, performance testing with utility will be completed before full operation. These systems are remotely monitored, so even when someone's not on site, we are able to monitor their production. If anything seems off, we send someone out there, things of that sort. So that is why it kind of allows us not to have to be on there 24/7 and generating that traffic once the system is operational. We do not propose lighting on our sites. I did see that in the code, so I just wanted to point that out. And then, of course, a Knox box will be available to local emergency personnel or anyone that would need to access the site for that reason. We will have a contact sign with emergency contact information on our fence, and an emergency management plan will be provided prior to pulling our building permit, and we will also provide training prior to operation per the county code. We've talked about this with Scott with the Conservation District. We do not plan for panel stockpiling on any of our sites in McHenry County. That is a really important condition that he has committed or communicated to us, and we have communicated to our EPC teams. Per the county code, at minimum, worst case, panels would be removed within 60 days. All right, and then post-commercial operation, talking very far down the line here. So decommissioning is what this kind of post-commercial operation term is used for. So decommissioning will of course be in accordance to any terms we have in our solar lease with our landowner, but just as importantly, but a little more refined per the McHenry ordinance and our AMA with the agricultural department. So, and we have a fully submitted AMA, which was submitted with our permit application, and we also have a decommissioning plan, including the cost estimates that was also submitted and you may have reviewed. I did see in the county code that will be revisited every 10 years for that cost breakdown. So that is a part of that, and we're covered there. And of course, that financial assurance will be issued to the county for them to utilize in that case that they would need to. Of course, as the operator, we would be responsible for decommissioning. We would, of course, try to recycle or salvage as much as we can and utilize that decommissioning financial assurance for the rest. Site would be returned to original site, and Joe Pez, landowner, would have, control back to do as he would with it, agricultural otherwise. All equipment is removed, even from underground. The only thing that is really left in place at times with the landowner desire is the road. So in case they wanted to keep it for ag access or otherwise. All right. So now I'm gonna jump a little bit into some diligence that we've done up to this day, of course, with the proximity to the conservation marsh. Some things were picked up on our EcoCat and other things, and of course we've just had that feedback from the community, which I'll talk about later as well. So just like a lot of solar farms that you see, our bare minimum kind of vegetation plan is a pollinator-friendly native grass mix. And also we design a small gap for little wildlife creatures to flow in and out, similar to like a Blanding's turtle. I was talking to Ed Collins from the Conservation District. He said, they're not very smart. If they hit a roadblock, they're just gonna keep going, kind of like a Roomba or something. But so I assured Ed that we have that, small gap for little critters to flow in and out of our project site. I did mention before that I have consulted with Scott previously from the Conservation District as well. So I've handed off that species list for the county and the performance standards to our ECP teams for the previous projects and as well as this one. So we have, like I mentioned, been working with Ed Collins. I've had a couple phone calls with him so far. His biggest concern was the mature old growth oaks that could potentially be on site, and per their historical mapping, he kind of figured there would be some. So beyond our environmental diligence of an EcoCat and an IPAC with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which is very desktop review, it's very regional data, we also did employ an third-party environmental surveyor to go out there and really take a look at what trees are out there, what wetlands are out there, what species are out there. So on our EcoCat, beyond the groundwater, we also did get a flag for the Blanding's turtle, so we had them take a look at that. And then for the IPAC, we did find a few different threatened and endangered species and no anticipated impacts to those species were found because of lack of suitable habitat on site. So that is from someone actually going out there, seeing it, and making that conclusion. And again, it is third party, so it is someone outside of our development. For the Blanding's turtle, there is potential for impact just because there's potential for some ecosystems or habitat on there. So we will follow that IDNR recommendations. We will work with the IDNR. We may follow up with them to say like, hey, here's what our survey showed. We didn't find any Blanding's turtles there, but we did find suitable habitat. Would you like to tweak your findings or would you like to stay the same? Either way, those plan to be followed for construction and operation and maintenance. I'll dive a little more into the oak trees in the next slide. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna take a sip of my water because I've been talking very fast. All right, so like I said, environmental survey was completed for wetlands, mature tree surveys, so not just oak trees, but I let the surveyor know, if you really see any other mature trees, just let me know. We'd love to see kind of what it's made up of out there so that we have better data to inform our mitigation practices later on. And then of course they checked for threatened and endangered species. So to our surprise, and Ed's too, no mature oaks were identified on our project parcels. Our surveyor did pick up just a couple right outside of our parcel, and you can see here that they are outside of the parcels, and so that is great that we can pretty much guarantee to avoid that tree removal of those old mature oaks that Ed Collins from the Conservation District flagged. The surveyor did note that the woodland area was majority cottonwood and pine trees, so that is what I'll kind of be discussing with Ed in future conversations. And of course, we will continue to work with him on conservation mitigation and efforts moving forward. And like I said, the surveyor did not identify any signs of wetlands or the threatened or endangered species observed from our IPAC. But the Blandings turtle is what we will continue working with the IDNR about. And then from the environmental survey, which I did provide to Kim and hopefully she handed out to you all, the one conclusion regarding migratory birds, which had a habitat also observed and a possibility for impact. The recommendation there was to have a survey done like 7 days prior to construction so we can understand what migratory birds might be out there. And there's also nesting times and things that we can work with our EPC team to better understand when that would help for mitigating that concern. Next slide. So this slide, you may remember from our last presentation, this one I want to, because we're in a residential area here, I am looking for a little more feedback both from the board and the public on this topic because, you know, it's not a black and white kind of thing. We have multiple different avenues that we take for vegetation and ecosystem management on site. What we do prefer and what program we've really been beefing up in the last year is our sheep grazing program. So we work with local grazers and to mobilize sheep to site actually. So instead of mowing, we would have sheep on site. Each grazer or shepherd is a little bit differently. Some may bring them out there and have them out there for a week at a time and then come back and pick them up. Of course, they always have water. The panels provide them shade. I just saw a video today of like sheep gathering under the panels. I've been on site with them when they're on there before. They all seem happy and I am, you know, an animal welfare advocate myself, so happy to take questions. But this is something that we employ on nearly all of our projects unless either a very select few counties don't allow it or we're doing crops or something instead because it's a heavy ag community. So yeah, for the residential properties nearby, of course, we welcome that feedback. We're happy to utilize our ecosystem enhancement program instead, which would simply be those pollinator grasses, utilize mowing and things like that. And of course, we would rely on Scott from the Conservation District to kind of create that seed mix and things like that. All right, so the next kind of big, I think this is kind of the last really like big meaty topic kind of before the end as far as like diligence we've done to this day. So for community outreach, we did send introduction letters and an invite to a community meeting that we held in the village of Island Lake. We obviously knew that a lot of people were going to be members of the village, residents there. So we held it actually at Side Outs Bar in the village. So from those mailers, I did receive one follow-up email from a gentleman, and he had a couple questions about construction and noise and things like that. So we had a couple follow-up emails, but he didn't end up attend the meeting. He actually did state that he was comfortable with the development. He preferred it over a residential development and things like that. Of course, this feedback is subjective and everyone's opinions can be different, but I did want to note that. So then we did hold a community meeting back in May, like I said, in Island Lake. We had 8 different households attend. Most were from that Southampton Drive, which is this southern road here from the big northern chunk of our project. So this is Southampton, this is Vista, Horton, and Roberts, of course. So the vast majority of attendees were from that Southampton Drive there. We made follow-up emails to all 8 of those attendees before this hearing, reminding them of the hearing, saying they should have, you know, you will be seen or you should have gotten a invite, and if you have any outstanding questions or anything, let me know. I think the morale from the meeting, I think everyone who came, I would say, from my opinion of everyone I talked to, I think everyone came a little bit more calm and, you know, a little less hesitant than they arrived. So we thought it was a really positive and really successful outcome. We also had our lead engineer there so he could answer any stormwater or really technical questions. And he is also leading the efforts and has seen the stormwater comments from the county and has assured us that it's similar to what we see on standard projects like this. So In reference to Island Lake specifically, we thought it was important to keep them in the loop, of course, due to the proximity to the village. So me, my engineer Joe, and another colleague of mine, Buzz Becker, did hold a meeting with the mayor, a trustee, and I believe a financial person from the village, but he kind of slipped in last minute, so I forgot his official title. But we met with them in the mayor's office prior to the community meeting, and then the mayor actually did attend the community meeting and was talking to some folks, took our handouts and things like that. So we're really, thankful for their participation so far, and we plan to continue discussing the project with them. We also have verbally pledged to them that, you may remember, we have the community partnership donation for Pivot's project. So for every 1 megawatt, we donate $5,000 to a local 501c3 organization. Because of the proximity to Island Lake, but the fact that it's in the county's jurisdiction, we would love to give that $15,000 to a specific Island Lake organization so that they can see some very direct and funds and benefits from the project. So I have made follow-up emails to the mayor to kind of identify some potential partners, and we will continue those conversations. Those funds are usually seen around the time we pull a building permit or hit notice to proceed, so ready to put a shovel to the ground. So we're a little far from that now, but of course we want to continue those conversations. And then the last piece of community outreach, of course we have a continued relationship with IBEW, as I said, and a letter of support from them was included in our package.
For those who can't remember, would you explain IBEW?
Yeah, so IBEW is, I think it's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and they have different local, or not international, I'm sure it's Illinois. Yeah, and they have different chapters across Illinois. So we work with the McHenry County specific chapter, and I forget his last name, but the gentleman's name is Jesse. He was at our last meeting, I believe, and spoke, but we just submitted a letter of support this time around. So we'll work with Jesse. He's met some of our project managers on our previous sites that are already permitted at this level. And yeah, we plan to continue to allow the IBEW to bid and, be at least a player in our EPC plans. Hopefully that covers that. So screening is where it gets a little more complicated because you have the topics of existing versus proposed screening, and then you also have to ensure that that screening is actually on our parcel, our parent parcel, Joe's land, right? Because we don't want to have to rely on any other property owner's screening in case they decide to do something with their property later on. So per McHenry County Code, of course, any non-participating residents or public right-of-way within 500 feet will be screened per the McHenry County standards. We know that is, I think McHenry has a lot of different types of screening that we can employ, but our usual specification for screening is evergreen trees to allow for that year-round screening. And we'll of course work with the local ecologist to identify what type of tree or even types for some diversity would be suitable and feasible for those sites and those areas. On the southern portion, it's a little more obvious where screening is needed because, for example, along this person's property, from our survey, we didn't identify a tree line on our landowner's property, so that is an obvious need to provide proposed screening right there. Similar to along the right-of-way, it's a little more obvious, especially now with that, proposed right-of-way and things. So this one's a little more clear-cut and things. I'm gonna go to the next slide, and then we can talk about the north half. Just make sure I didn't miss anything. So the north half is where we get a little more, it's a little more confusing because I've been on site a couple times. I know that aerial photos aren't completely accurate and Google Street View and things like that. And it is important that obviously for visual impacts and being a good neighbor and those things that we do follow the screening code per McHenry County and take the public's input into account. So you'll see, you probably noticed a couple of call outs on here that, where any sparse vegetation exists on our own property, we will follow McHenry County's code for adding vegetation. In addition, I have talked to 2 neighbors now, just from the follow-up emails I sent out about screening stipends. So these are similar to good neighbor agreements where we understand from being on site. I know especially right over here, there's a couple homes that really lack vegetation in their own backyards where they have a clear visual view of where the proposed project will go. So we have already drafted up some legal agreements for them to review that would say that at this point in the project, we will release these funds to you and you can use them for screening. So that is something that we employ for projects of this type where, you know, we try to always be as far from residences as we can, but we're a little limited with space here. So we do lean on things like a good neighbor agreement when need be. But the vast majority of existing vegetation on Southampton will stay, really all of it except for these little pieces here. And on the topic of screening, I do want to note that what you see submitted is a worst case scenario sort of scenario. The last thing we wanted to do was overpromise, underdeliver, and then, you know, try to shrink it down at this stage where we don't have drain tile surveys, like final procurement or, you know, manufacturer details and things like that. So we wanted to show what may be a worst case scenario, but we already have plans in place working with engineering and procurement to hopefully procure things like higher wattage modules. You know, right now this is designed with 545 watt modules. If we got something, this project would be a great candidate for 600 watt modules, same manufacturer, same level of warranties and all those things. But that could mean nearly 1,000 less panels. And so we are working with Ed Collins of the Conservation District, as well as our engineering team, our EPCM team, and our third-party engineers as well, to kind of identify where we can bring in this site, make it a little tighter. Maybe our spacing gets, of course, still up to code, but a little bit closer together. Things like that to try to cut down that tree clearing as much as possible. And when we do identify those areas where we can minimize that tree clearing, a great outcome of the community meeting we had was that a lot of neighbors identified that this site, the Pez land, has been used since this subdivision has been created, really as a buffer to other land uses to the north. And the one that was brought up consistently was this truck yard, of course. You know, truck yards, semis, of course, can create noise. They're not lovely to look at. So a lot of neighbors said, you know, I'm really concerned about you clearing pretty much up to the property line, which we originally had designed, I believed. So an outcome of that community meeting, and thankfully we got a survey too to kind of understand where the tree line was and everything, was to pull that in as much as we can for now with the data we have right now, so that we do maintain a tree line through there, and any tree clearing that we can minimize, we will prioritize that corner because it serves as a buffer between residential and commercial industrial land uses. So that is kind of our plan for now. Again, this is a worst case scenario as far as tree clearing. No mature oaks like Ed Collins and I discussed, but we still want to minimize it as much as possible. We are also looking at a slightly different type of racking potentially, still the same similar footprint, very similar racking and things, but maybe something that can get us a better land to output ratio, and we can minimize some tree clearing. So we're getting a little creative and things with that. So more to come at the stage of a building permit when we would have things like drain tile surveys and module type and all that stuff. But definitely wanted to put that out there because I'm sure there'll be some questions on that. We can go to the next slide. Also a really fun topic is property values. So in reviewing some meeting minutes and of course being a developer for some years myself, I know this is a very common concern for people. We did submit a property values executive summary with our permit application. This was just done earlier this year for another project in Illinois that we had. And our partner, as in our third party kind of preferred partner for these purposes, CohnReznick, did provide the executive summary, and they did a mix of reviewing existing academic studies. They conducted their own studies, some in Illinois, some in the rest of the Midwest, some elsewhere. And they also interviewed Illinois County assessors on property value impacts. And there were no measurable impacts on property values demonstrated in terms of proximity to solar farms. And the assessors, I just want to point out, were in the LaSalle, Winnebago, and Champaign counties of Illinois, all of which, of course, have solar farms in their jurisdiction. And the assessors themselves did state that they did not observe any impacts to property values due to proximity to solar farms. So that was submitted with our application, just as a reminder, but happy to chat more on that. Just 2 more slides here, and then we can get to questions and comments. So different than property values, but property tax generation and different community benefits from the project. So solar projects in Illinois are subject to property taxes at a lot higher of a rate than, say, row crop or agricultural use. So the estimated total property taxes for 1 year of operation for this project is, in the first year, nearly $20,000. What it is currently is, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was like $1,200, $1,400 or something like that. So it is a significant increase. And then over the 30-so-year lifespan of the project, Pivot, the developer, would pay $242,000 in property taxes, nearly $225K difference, or over a $225,000 difference. So that is a huge, of course, benefit to the county and the different districts that receive those funds, the conservation district, the township, of course, roads and bridges, fire districts, cemeteries. The school district is a huge one, as you probably know. The county, of course, McHenry Community College, and the area library. So a good wide variety of taxing districts that could benefit from those funds, and of course, things that village people and people who drive in and out of the village and township each and every day will benefit from indirectly. So beyond that, the huge benefit of community solar and kind of the whole purpose behind it is that subscribers are able to get their energy from our solar arrays and lock in a bill rate savings. It's a little complex, but basically what I can say is that the bill rate savings is generally 20%, which equates to about a 7 to 10% savings on your just average utility bill cost. So that is a huge thing, and information on that was handed out at our community meeting, and phone numbers and emails were provided for subscription sign up. Another one that I already covered, but just as a reminder, is our community partnership donation. This is something that Pivot employed and started just in the last year or so, and just in 2023 alone, we did make $400,000 worth of community partnership donations to those 501c3 organizations. So it's a program we're really proud of and look forward to continuing it in the local area here. So, of course, overall benefits, I have named a lot of them already, but utility savings, property tax revenue, and of course, private dollars being used to upgrade and expand utility infrastructure, leaning into that local economy and encouraging workforce training with things like the IBEW. Like I said, training the local economy, sorry, I'm repeating myself. The community donation generally aimed at workforce development, reducing energy burden, enhancing rural communities, things of that nature, bolstering our distribution grid, and of course, energy is a need. We all use it each and every day. So this project will provide a new clean energy option for newcomers and established landowners, businesses, etc. in the area. And kind of a little segue is this will also allow this farmland that has been rotated from one crop to another for decades and decades. It allows it to rest, and in the meantime is what we have heard and believe is a harmonious neighbor with no low noise, low traffic, no odor, things of that nature. So with that, whatever the preference is, I do have my landowner here who would love to make a statement if we'd like to take that into record, or he can wait until later on if that's preferred.
If you'd like to do it now, if it's part of your testimony, you can do that now.
I think that would fit best. If you don't mind, so.
Sure.
Joe, I'll have you come up.
Please excuse my reading this. I'd like to keep it short and to the point, and so reading it will help do that. And it is a family farm, so I'm going to try to keep it from being emotional as well by reading.
Could you give me your name and your
Yes, I will.
residence address?
My name is Joe Pez. The property is 302 Porton Road. My address is 260 Orchard Place in Fox Lake. I am representing the Joe and Nancy Pez Family LLCs, which are the owners of the property. And I've been asked to present the family background and the reasons for our petition for a special use permit for a solar farm partnership on our land. I'm happy to do so. This land's been in our family since 1908. It has been farmed and used for agricultural uses, including landscaping, throughout that entire time. My grandparents, aunts, uncles, and finally my father farmed there until the 1970s, when the size and the scope were just no longer tenable as a farm. I was part of that process for many of those years until the landscaping business closed in 2008. We have continued to farm the tillable acreage since then, and I have been the administrator for the LLCs since my mother's passing in 2012. In farming terms, this is a small parcel, and it has been increasingly difficult to find farmers willing to travel the distance to farm this acreage. The struggle of anyone tasked with stewarding undeveloped land is finding the best use of it. And given that between taxes, insurance, and maintenance, it costs money to maintain land. There is also, of course, an emotional component that factors in when it's family farmed. So I've pursued development since 2012 of all kinds, from housing to industrial and commercial. Each had an initial appeal, but either failed ultimately because of it being a bad fit economically or a bad fit for the area. McHenry County has a controlled growth strategy, preservation of wetlands and natural areas, while allowing and encouraging economic development, including housing and expanding populations for workers to staff that development. What it adds up to is an increased need for energy. Environmentally, there will be little impact from this installation, allowing for prairie and native grasses to return around the array. Wildlife will continue to travel the corridor from the slough to the river. Economically, this solar array adds value to McHenry County just at the time when you're persuading companies to come here, ensuring available, affordable power locally. Additionally, it allows the self-sufficiency for residents as they become subscribers and can buy discounted electricity locally. I'm happy to be here today to petition for the special use permit for a solar array on behalf of my family. I believe it's a long-term benefit to our local and county communities, and I hope you'll grant it to ensure McHenry County's energy dependence for years to come. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, we'll start with questions from the board regarding the testimony. Starting on my left, Mr. Kozin.
Thank you. Can we start with the design decision to use Porton Road as opposed to Roberts Road?
Yeah, of course. So there is, of course, as you may be able to see, and Kim, if you want to maybe switch back. Yeah, thank you. So Mr. Pez does have an existing drive off of Porton Road that we will be connecting to and then upgrading or constructing from there. As I said, the vast majority of the traffic caused by the project is during construction, the 6 to 10 or so months. After that, it's really like 2 to 4 visits a year generally. Another reason beyond traffic and an existing entryway is that Roberts Road does have those, turns, and it's a busier road and things like that. So as far as safety, we've seen that from some feedback from transportation districts and things, that safety is a concern on those larger roads with higher speed limits, and of course those curbs that you see kind of on both sides. So that was the logic from our end based on feedback from previous projects, existing roadways and such. And I don't believe McHenry Department of Transportation, I don't believe that was a part of their feedback, so I don't believe I'm confident that it was not a part of their feedback. It was just the right-of-way, proposed right-of-way. So, yeah, that was it. And lastly, the existing transmission lines on Porton Road.
So if I may uncouple your response, there's an intersection at Roberts Road called Lampier Road, and yet there is no intersection and a 90-degree turn between Porton Road and Roberts Road. Why did you presume that the intersection of Lampier Road and your service road is a safer location than 150 feet from a 90-degree blind intersection?
I don't know if I'm understanding the question, I'm sorry.
The Lampier Road intersects Roberts Road as a T intersection
yeah.
at the north.
Up north.
There is no such intersection of the gravel road to Portland Road. In fact, not quite 125 to 120 to 150 feet to the west is a 90-degree turn from Roberts Road. So as you travel Roberts Road west on Portland, that's where you're presuming to make your intersection. Why did you think that an intersection of an existing roadway is safer than a point at an intersection where there's a 90-degree turn?
So are you saying that you would have suggested creating,
I'm not a transportation
A T
engineer, I
here?
just wondered if anyone opined on that point.
But yeah, I would suggest it.
Liz, can you weigh in here at all?
So is the suggestion that it would be preferable for us to access where Lampier Road would just enter into the site?
All my point is that if you had conversations with the traffic engineers, that would be a point to raise with them. And that wasn't in the testimony, and that's my question is going to that.
Yes, so as part of the building permit process, from what I understand, we will be required to speak with traffic engineers in order to get our access permit. But again, the main reason that Portland Road was chosen was because of existing access on our leased parcel, along with the existing distribution lines, where we have been under study with ComEd as well. So our point of interconnection is also off of Portland Road. To simplify the design as much as possible, we typically design our access roads to be where the point of interconnection is as well, because by law, we have to provide safe access for utility workers to access our equipment as well.
Could you please identify yourself and your position?
Sorry. I am Liz Reddington, VP of Project Development with Pivot Energy.
So following up on the point of access then, using that route to Portland Road, though, runs through a tree line, and in order for you to have above-ground pole-mounted equipment, you're going to be removing over a half acre's worth of trees on the west side of that service road. Is that correct?
So are you talking about
I'm pointing to a
these
note.
areas right here?
There's a note your hand just went over. It says tree removal. Trimming is needed for construction of an access road, approximately a half acre.
Yeah, so that, I've walked through there before, and Joe, remind me, I think most of it is cleared.
Yeah, it's a former lane where the cows used to run, and we've had tree growth up on both sides of it. So in order to expand the road back there, they have to take one section out that's not on the side by the homes, but rather the side that grew up towards the field. So that is about the acreage that would be removed there. So it won't impact the existing screening area, but rather it's sort of a buffer between the existing field and where the lane was.
And we can try to stay as close to that existing lane as possible and remove just new old growth. And then from there, it's really just like some trimming and things like that. And we're happy to take like pointers from an ecologist of time of year to trim and, you know, mechanisms for doing so. We also, of course, would employ like somebody who does that and is familiar with those sorts of things. But I think to your point then is you're thinking, well, if you want to eliminate tree removal, why didn't you bring your access road elsewhere where tree removal wouldn't be required? Is that kind of your point?
Well, my point more is why do tree removing behind a residential area instead of a center line extended west on Lampier Road?
Yeah, and it is for those interconnection purposes, as we noted before, the existing roadway, so utilizing already existing impervious area and things like that. And as Joe pointed out, we have shifted it enough here. A prior site plan would have noted that tree removal was right along up to our property line here, but we have shifted it over in order to maintain some of that existing vegetation that is on our parcel.
So just to follow up on that, so ComEd only identified one interconnect, and that one interconnect was only on Portland Road?
Yes.
In terms terms of, who was the third party who did the ID of the on-site natural resources?
So a desktop review would have been done by HBK Engineering, and then, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but HBK partners then with Canacre, C-A-N-A-C-R-E, services company, and they performed the environmental survey just like 2 weeks ago.
On-site.
On site. They brought the environmental expert on site to do all of those surveys.
Briefly, what is their definition of a mature tree?
So I actually did make an introduction between Ed Collins of the Conservation District and Kevin, who performed the survey. So Ed was able to provide some of that input. I think he did talk about the breast width and things like that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think I can ask our environmental surveyor like what they would have defined it as. But I think Ed did make points of that, mature oak trees aren't always just giant, breasted oak trees. Sometimes they are a bit smaller. So those conversations, I'm not that expert, so I'm really not, communicating this well, but that introduction was made and those conversations were had before the survey was employed.
How many fields or community solar are you presently operating in Illinois? Pending or?
How many do we have operating in Illinois?
So we will have approximately 11 sites operating under our ownership in Illinois beginning this year.
And how many in ComEd's territory?
Of those sites, it would be 2, 3, 4 sites.
And that's because Pivot just in the recent years became owner-operator. So before we were developing and then selling off those projects.
Do you have a comparative breakdown in terms of the property tax between those various units of government, meaning how much pre and post? So how much the school district gets now versus how much the school district gets after you're in operation?
Yeah, so you're talking, so like our property taxes that we pay as a developer, what did the school district get before and what do they get now?
Yes.
Yeah, I can pull that up if you give me just 1 second.
Rather than delay it, if you could just enter it into the record would be sufficient.
Yeah, it generally is like a few hundred to a few thousand or so. But yeah,
It's a 1.5 ratio.
So with any absence of any students, they would get 1.5 more from that parcel, is that?
Any absence of any students?
Well, you're not creating any students on the site as residents.
Correct, yeah, there's no kiddos coming out of there.
No one taking any library books out?
Right, I guess to your point, yes.
No baby sheep.
Yeah, I don't think they're being entered into the local school district.
In terms of community outreach, have you reached out to McHenry County Community College, which you have identified on your sheet as College District 528?
We have talked to them, not in terms of property taxes, but they actually were the identified community partner for our previous 3 projects. So I have been in contact with Brian at MCC to solidify that community partnership with our past projects. He's been a hard man to get a hold of because they just had a huge fundraiser, golf fundraiser in recent weeks. But yes, that is.
Just to be more focused, their role, if any, in the Vogel Center, which just opened up this month, and we'll be expecting students, is something that you may, or do you understand?
The Vogel Center?
Yes.
Do you know what type of program or students it would serve?
As I understand it, I'm asking the questions, but nonetheless, I would hope that that would be a technology that you could pursue as a community outreach, especially since you're contributing taxes to
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I definitely wrote down that information. And I did notice that McHenry MCC is kind of smack dab in the middle of Island Lake and our other Woodstock projects. So we thought that would make even better to provide, because the community partnership donation for those 3 projects, as you remember, was like $50,000 to $60,000. So we thought, even better. It's maybe some folks from Island Lake can also benefit from that as well. So I took down the Vogel Center, and we're happy to follow up specifically with Brian about that for sure. I also did just pull up the tax calculator. So this is something that our internal accountants help prepare for us to think about inflation, and it's how we've come up with those numbers of everything based on the tax rate that solar farms are put at versus like an existing land use. And what I have is that the tax rate for the school district is 6.63% on site, so we're looking from a $215 yearly contribution to a $14,000 contribution.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate the thoroughness. Just to go back to the detail of technology, under your equipment pad, you have a piece of equipment identified as a DASN weather station. Can you expand on what that is?
So that would go into weather monitoring, as I understand it, for monitoring our site, for things such as severe weather and things like that. Liz, I don't know if you want to expand on that at all?
No, that's exactly what that piece of equipment does. It's how we remotely monitor the production or the performance rather. So it's a weather station that shows, it is a really sunny day. Is the solar array also highly performing? Or does the weather station say it's really cloudy and rainy? Are we in line with what the weather is currently? Or conversely, is the weather really sunny and the solar array is not performing? That means that something's wrong. So that is what that piece of equipment is.
Does it also do wind speeds and as well as temperatures?
I would think so. It picks up on any local weather data that's occurring. So I would think that it would include wind, but I am not 100% on that.
Oh, is DAS?
Like it'll know if there are high wind events because that is what triggers our racking to stop moving.
Really?
So yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about that, it would have to pick up wind speed.
Madam Chair, I'm almost to my end of my list. Thank you for your patience. In terms of your subscribers, who administers your subscriber program?
We have an internal subscription kind of branch of Pivot. So it's called Sun Central. So we actually internally do a lot of our subscription management. They do, I think, have third parties for making some of those calls and things and like the recruitment sort of part of it, but it is managed in-house by us. I don't know, Liz, do you have anything to add?
No, that's exactly right. So we are responsible as the owner and operator to also acquire and manage our subscribers to our gardens. And so we do that internally.
So how far from this facility can a subscriber be a resident or residing or have their meter?
Anywhere in the ComEd territory, really. Mm-hmm. But we would, for recruitment, we like to start locally and then work out as we need to.
Thank you. That concludes it. I appreciate it.
Okay, Ms. Beverly.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify, Scott Kuykendall works for the county, not the Conservation District. He's our water resources specialist.
Okay,
So
thank
he
you.
works with Kim, and Ed Collins is a different branch of government.
Okay, thank you.
I have questions for staff and for you. I'm gonna bounce them off at the same time. You invited 60 households, including the mayor, to your community meeting. How did you send out these invitations?
It was sent out by USPS certified mailers.
Okay. You're applying for the regular community solar program, not community-driven community solar.
Correct.
So the 15,000 that you have in community benefits is not compulsory as part of your application?
Correct.
So that means that it's just an extra offering that your company's doing for the community, you're not required to?
We are not required to do that. It's a Pivot nationwide program that we do for all of our projects.
And I want to touch on that as well. For the screening stipends, that is not required under our ordinance or under the Illinois state law, correct?
It is not.
No.
So you are just doing that because your company has a policy to be a good neighbor?
Correct.
Similarly, you were not required to adjust the site plan to move that access road because you have an existing easement under your lease and you moved it to preserve the screening that's existing?
We would have to add screening either way because it's within 500 feet. So we figure to, obviously preserve mature trees and, preserve it versus having to wipe it out only to add brand new 5-foot evergreens. Yeah.
Also, it's not compulsory that you meet with Scott Kuykendall or Ed Collins to develop a site plan for this project? You could have submitted it without meeting with any partners?
Correct, we'd probably have to consult them at some point later down the line, but we wanted to engage with them ahead of time so that we had better informed presentation and a better site design, really.
Right. So all of this was done on your dollar before you got to this process? None of it was specifically required by our building permits or our UDO?
It's required of me to do my job because I work for Pivot Energy, but yeah, it wasn't required by the code.
And getting back to the inverter stuff, I just looked it up on Yale's website. They have a really nice
Chart, yeah.
decibel meter. And so according to what they say, a vacuum cleaner is 75 decibels. And this, can you go back to that slide? It's only 65 decibels?
Yep, at 10 feet away from it.
Okay. And the closest house to an inverter is?
Somewhere between like 180 to 200 feet.
So yeah, I've never heard my neighbor's vacuum cleaner from 200 feet away. Okay. I think that those are most of my questions. Thank you so much.
Mr. Aldridge.
I have no questions at this time.
Ms. Gretton.
Okay, staying on the whole noise aspect of this. Now, you said that you were standing right next to one of the panels when it began tracking.
And that's the motor, not the inverter, but yes.
Yes, exactly. And it sounded like a toaster to you?
It was like, you know, those timers that tick, 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 you know, like the little ones. It sounded very similar to that. Like we could continue our conversation, but I was like, oh, I've never been right next to one when it was doing that. So it was just,
So it's
an
a
observation.
continuous ticking noise, but,
For a few seconds and then it stops. And
Okay.
then as the sun moves, it does it for a few more seconds. And so it's in total 20 minutes per day that it's moving, but it's broken up throughout the day when the sun's out.
I understand better now. I was thinking that they all sounded like toasters and
A bunch of ticking
that could
noises
be a lot
everywhere
of noise,
constantly.
you know, 1,000 toasters popping at one
Right.
time.
No, yeah.
Only if your toaster dings.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, take off the bagels side. right?
Yeah, no, good question.
Okay, and how many panels are in each section of this project?
Oh, on each string, I guess, let me see if that's on the site plan. We
I
just
didn't
have the
see it.
total. I think we just have the total, so around 7,500. We have, how many strings we have? Yeah, I don't think I see how many are on each string,
Yeah, I couldn't find that anywhere,
but I'm happy to ask and add it in or do the math and see how many rows there are and then divide it by the number of panels. if that
okay, well, I
helps.
don't really care about the number per se.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to get to was that at some point you mentioned that these are 550 mega something?
545 kilowatt modules, yeah.
Oh, kilowatt, okay,
Or watt, sorry, not kilowatt, watt, just W.
watt, okay.
I'm not an engineer, so I
Put a
struggle
no
with
in there
this
for no
sometimes.
reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said that if these could be 600 watts,
Mhm.
that you would actually have far fewer panels.
Potentially, yes. I'm not an electrical
Okay.
engineer, but based on basic math of output and the panel's production, you know, I did some basic calculations and it would eliminate almost 1,000 panels.
Oh,
So-
okay,
But if each panel is creating a greater output, then you don't need as many. So that's kind
right,
of the base there.
that's what I assumed from what you said. But not knowing how many panels there were and, you know, et cetera.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that helps me understand that better. And changing the subject altogether, the soil and water report had they had one section, and I can't really give you a page number. I think it's which does not help anybody with anything. But there's a section that said ground-based solar arrays. The NRCS soil survey indicates 5.7 acres or 63.9% of the parcel has severe limitations for soil-anchored solar arrays identified in red, and they have a little map here, it looks like it's the wooded areas to me, mostly the wooded areas, but there's some that spills over. And then it says, the reason for the limitation can be found on page 27 of the report. I didn't have the report, so I couldn't look at page 27. Do you know about this, or can you explain what those limitations are?
Yes, I can. And I do want to point out that Pivot Energy, of course, will have geotechnical studies done. So people actually go out to site with the, the boring soil technology and get those kind of pull push test sort of things. But let me find page 27 and we can dig into that further. And we do those geotechnical analyses before we do our final designs. So that sort of information would be included in a final design submitted for building permit. Page 27 is just a list of each type of soil.
I see that
So unless
now.
you're a geologist, it's really not going to mean much to you, unfortunately.
So it sounds almost like if you pound these things into the ground, they could just fall over.
Yeah, well, okay, based on desktop, this is a desktop review, right? So it sort of flags based on desktop data, what could be issues. And so that we take into consideration. We have people go out on site, all third party, go out on site. Applied Geosciences is our vendor for geotechnical studies and surveys. So they would go out into site and choose boring locations, especially in those areas of concern. And then they would get that data of like, okay, this corner or this chunk you need to avoid. And then we can just adjust our pile drive based on, or rows or such, based on that information. And stuff like that is why we can't like make promises for tree clearing and things like that at this stage, which is why we put that kind of worst case scenario. That data is what we need in order to be able to tell exactly what we're gonna be able to eliminate as far as tree clearing and where we can kind of move things around.
I see.
The geotech investigation will determine the appropriate depth to drive our piles to ensure that the racking can stay in place.
So that's your method of mitigation then, is to go deeper rather than,
Correct.
okay.
While also avoiding,
There could be
anything
areas
to-
that you have to completely avoid.
yeah,
Okay.
and avoiding certain depths and things. So yeah, that vendor focuses specifically on soil composition and the characteristics of that soil, because we are not experts in that area.
Okay. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Schnabel.
No questions at this time.
Mr. Jers.
No questions.
I just have one question. I'd like to go back to the slide that shows the 4 oaks. So those 4 oaks are not on the property owned by the petitioner?
I have confirmed with my engineer that loaded them into CAD with the survey that they are not, yeah.
Okay. And the canopy of those trees, I mean, you have a blue line and then you have a red line on the inside. And I'm assuming, that even the canopy of those trees will probably not be impacted by your construction efforts?
True, and they're not on our property, so I don't believe we'd be able to do anything about that anyway, but they are set back more than far enough, especially those ones, Oak Tree 3, for instance, kind of in that middle, that gets somewhat close. That's only our access road nearby, so we wouldn't even really be concerned about shading there. And then on the north side, we're
I'm
gonna.
not worried about shade, I'm
Okay.
worried about compaction of the soil that can impact the life of trees
Oh,
sometimes.
right,
So
okay,
when you're doing construction activities and that sort of thing, so,
right.
but they're far enough off where you would be doing construction that they would not be impacted?
Yeah, and that can absolutely be something that Ed and I discuss, if we should mark trees and what that, what that kind of surrounding soil impact should look like during and after.
That would be great if you could,
Yeah.
because I know and sometimes they've just done a little silt fence or something just so that the
Yeah.
construction people know not to get that close. But it looks like your trees are far enough away that it would not even have an impact. I wanted to ask
Yeah,
that
and I can
question.
bring up those sorts of potential worries with Ed, because he's, again, an expert, and happy to continue working with him on those sorts of things.
I have just one more
Does staff have any questions?
Just have one question.
One more question.
We didn't receive anything from the Conservation District on this, did we?
We did not.
And we have in the past.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's all, thanks.
Excuse me,
Ms. Charlotte, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Cozen.
I was gonna wait for staff. Did we hear any report from any of the adjoining or within proximity of the municipalities in the area?
No, I did not receive anything.
And anything from the township or anything
No.
in that regard? Thank you.
So just to confirm, no letters of concern by any tax body
Correct.
that would be imprinted? Okay. All right, at this time, we would open the questions up to members of the public. If you would like to ask a question, I'll set my timer on my phone for 3 minutes. You can come up, identify yourself and the address where you live, and then you'll have your 3 minutes to ask questions. So if anyone would like to do that, go ahead and come on up.
All right, go ahead.
Sir, yeah,
No, there was a young lady there, she go first.
Go ahead.
Ladies always go first.
all right.
I am Janice Kulik, and I'm one of those people that live right in the park that
Please
showed
give
it.
your street address.
4608 Southampton Drive. Now, I did go to the sign-outs meeting, that kind of stuff, but I still have questions. You know, it's all supposed to be, nobody's going to know this is even there. We are going to know it's there. I mean, that's just the way it is. And you've already said we're not going to be able to deny this. Am I correct with that? It's going through no matter what, and we just could fix the conditions. Is that correct, as I understand?
We're not allowed.
So this is
yeah.
going to happen no matter what, so we have to put our 2 cents in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I have questions. I live on that part there. Why is the road, can you go back a couple screens? Back. That one. This here. Why is, this is the part that everybody sees the most of, right here. Why does the road come there? And then you said that was going to be the noisy part. This is going to be where the batteries are. Am I correct on that too?
There are no batteries.
Oh,
slated
then what
for
was
this
the
property.
The DAS weather
weather.
station?
No, not the weather station. On this, it said,
The inverter, is that what
there
you're
was
referring
something
to?
else there.
It's not a battery for like storage.
So there is no, well, that's another thing. There's no fluid stored here?
No.
There's no batteries?
No
Nothing, okay. But this, why didn't the road, you went, in the backside is the sewer system, or the sewer plant, northwest, and the Northern Moraine wastewater people. Here you went and so all this construction, everything's gonna go here every day, all this stuff. I live right here. I think this one's my house. Why do they have to go, why is it there? Why didn't you go on the other side when there is no other, nobody lives there? Nobody's on that side. You could have just taken, if you're gonna bother to go all this way instead of coming up Lamphere, you went ahead and, you cut right into the subdivision. That's the stuff we're gonna see. I don't know, it's just, are we gonna have any lights there? Are we going to have, there's no pole lights, there's no lights at all, period. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? Yeah, I swear you said that was this noisy something. So what is this part here?
The inverter, yeah, you can keep going. I think I know what you're talking about, so you can keep using your time. I don't want to use your time to answer your questions. I want you to get to.
Well, okay, so I live here?
Yep.
So how much room are we gonna have? Am I gonna have this, I'm gonna have.
No trees will be removed behind your
Yeah,
backyard.
but I'm gonna have a road first, then I'm gonna have a fence, and then I'm gonna have this here. I mean, the roads, is this gonna be the road?
That black hatched part is the road, correct? So I can try to hit on a couple of those questions, and then Janice, I think you should have my information from either the letter, and I'm happy to answer anything you didn't get to. So our roads do have to go all the way to our equipment pads, obviously for utility and safety accessibility. Our engineer was on site and did notice some standing water, a slight depression to the east there. So he did move the equipment pad slightly west, of course, with electrical equipment and water don't mix well. So that was the reason for that slight shift. We could revisit that, I suppose, but we do need to have an access road all the way to our equipment pad so that our utility can access it. And like I said, no screening, so the tree clearing is that yellow hatched area. So those neighbors like directly to the south of that equipment pad will not have any trees removed, so hopefully that helps, I think. And there is no batteries, this is not a battery storage project, and there are no lights on site. I don't know if you would need that.
Yeah, the only other thing to try to better explain the design is that that equipment pad is placed to be as central as possible to the entire array, because all of the wiring comes to one place. And that, again, by law, we have to have an access road all the way to that equipment pad.
Is there anyone else who has questions?
Yeah, I had some.
Please come
I
up
had a
with the
question for you. My name is Joe Jecka. I live at 803 Portland Road. Are you guys aware, or have you done any studies? Do you know how many houses that Portland Road feeds, where people go in daily, in and out? Do you have any idea of the size of the community besides Island Lake? There's a whole array of houses there. That road coming in is just
You
gonna
gotta ask a
jack
question.
everything up. I want to know what you've done in terms of study for the amount of people and the disruption and exactly how long it's going to take to build the road. I've seen road construction. It's never on time. And everybody here can attest to that. So I really think my issue is, you're going to cork up that road so bad. School buses, garbage, people. It's going to be a mess forever. That's why I think the corner makes more sense to me.
Okay, yeah, so before we can pull a building permit, we'll have to work with the county for something called a road use agreement. It is required per the county code, and that will cover things such as, you know, if we damage anything because of construction, we are liable to
I'm not asking
pay
about
for
damage.
it.
It's just a dirt path there. There's no road there. It's a driveway. There's nothing there. And there's a big hill you gotta climb as well. Are you aware of that?
On the site?
Yes.
Yes, I've walked the site several
Okay.
times,
And that's
so,
just a dirt path there. There's no
Right.
road or any access there.
yeah, it will be
How
improved,
wide's the road gonna be?
20 feet.
20 feet. And how wide of an area do you need to make a turn with a semi off of Portland?
I am not sure, but my engineers have those standards, and that's why we have those turnaround areas and such. That's
Turnaround area where?
the hammerheads on
Within
our
the
design.
array.
I'm talking about, what about when cars are coming in off Portland Road and you got semis there and they're hauling dirt and concrete and everything to build the road? Do you realize how that's gonna cork that up? Do you have any idea the damage may happen to Portland Road from that point in?
So as I said, there will be a required road use agreement that will
Who's
have,
that gonna be?
You
before
have
we
to
pull
let her
our,
answer the question, sir.
before we pull our building permit. So we will not be allowed to touch a shovel to the ground and start constructing this thing until we have a building permit and a road use agreement worked on and provided like by the county and highway engineer, or, you know, I might be getting that title wrong, but someone who does traffic studies and knows roads in and out. I am not a road expert. That's why the county puts up a requirement that we need to pull a road use agreement.
One road in
before we
and
even-
one road out. And that's all that Portland Road is.
And it will be improved. The road coming off of Port Road will absolutely be improved. We like to use existing roads so that we don't have to dig up a bunch of vegetation or anything like that, you know, so we're utilizing as much as the existing as we can and then building it from there. And we have a lot of projects.
I just don't understand how it can be cost effective to come in off of Portland Road and not come in off of Roberts Road by Lamprey Road where this gentleman was talking about. You got a straight shot right in. I don't understand why you would make all that cost of a road going up and making a turn when you could come straight into your property. And that
Okay.
trucking company
Your
right
time
there,
is
you're
up,
talking
sir.
about.
Your
Pardon?
time is up.
Well, geez, I'm being punished like a little school child. Oh, thank you.
My name is Patricia Urban. I didn't know about this because
Please come up and give your address as well.
4708 Vista Drive, which was why I didn't know about this. I can walk there in less than 5 minutes. But I
Are you
live
having a
Vista.
question? You'll have a
I
chance
would
for
like to have a
comments
question.
later. This
Fine.
is to ask her a question
My
regarding her
question is,
testimony.
What are you going to do when that road is backed up? Horton is our only way in, our only way out. In an emergency, what do? Do we go through the wetland? That's our only way, that is our only way in and out. Our only way.
Yeah, and the highway, the county highway engineer will be aware of that, and we have implications in a road use agreement as far as like blocking roadways and things like that, and damage to any roadways. This isn't, you know, it's not the first construction project to happen. We'll have traffic signs and things of that nature to help the flow of traffic and.
You said it would be improved. What does improved mean? Does that mean you're gonna widen it?
If it's not existing 20-foot wide and can't handle the weight of our construction trucks, we will improve any
So we're
area
gonna have a
that.
wider road, trucks going in and
On
out.
Joe's property, there will be a wider road. Not on Portland,
We're not widening Portland.
unless the township or county tells us we have to, we do not improve that road.
I can walk there. Doesn't matter Joe's property. I can be at Joe's property in 3 minutes. I'm his neighbor, except
Okay,
I'm on
a
the
question,
other
ma'am,
street.
a
I
question,
will.
please.
I'm worried about mitigation. According to, as I said, I just learned about this, so I haven't had time to study it. According to what I've read, every 2 minutes, a bird will be ignited in midair. And so will bats and insects because of this. What are you going to, how are you going to mitigate that? And then raptors, which are larger, owls and hawks, their wings will be singed. Don't get out of there alive, they'll be damaged. So what are you going to do about that?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the study, and also the conservation district and our environmental specialists third party have not brought up that concern. The conservation district is aware, obviously, that it's a solar project.
Every 2 minutes, a bird is going to drop dead.
We have not experienced that on our other sites, so I haven't looked at the study that you're referencing, so I'm not
According
familiar with
to
it.
your own, if you look on your own website, you're going to see it. Yeah. So in summary, they're going to get a lot of money. My property taxes will increase by, my property value will decrease by 1.5 to 7% because I'm less than
You
half
have a
my
question? You're making a
So
statement.
what are you going to do to mitigate that?
I also am not familiar with the study that you're referencing for the 1.5 to 7%. Our
It's on
studies
your website.
done this year do
It's
not
on your
show that.
website. Read your website.
Does anyone else have a question regarding your testimony? You'll have a chance for statements later.
Actually, I do have
You
a
can-
question to all of you.
You can't, your time is up, ma'am.
If this is a
You
done
used your
deal, why
time
are
up.
we here?
Please.
If it's a done deal, why are you here?
Yeah, why are we here?
The state requires that we hold a public hearing.
Yeah, but I didn't know about it because I live a quarter mile away, but I don't live on Southampton.
They're required to post signs along the frontages as well
I'm
as
sorry to
send,
go over time again, but the sign that was posted.
there were 2 signs posted in the appropriate
Exactly.
location.
The sign on Portland is I have a picture of it.
I have a picture as well.
It's in a ditch, and you can see the top of it. I didn't even see that. I was driving by and I thought, what's that white thing? I got out of my car, I had to go take a picture of it to see the sign in a ditch. The one on Roberts Road is, you can't even see it.
Well, I do have photographs of them, we can
Our
go over that
staff-
later. But,
Yeah, our staff monitors that.
Well, they
Okay,
didn't do a
so
good
I'm
job
sorry,
because
ma'am,
there are
your
two-
time is
there are
up.
two wooden
Please be,
uprights. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
please be respectful or you will be asked to leave. Would you like me to call security?
Okay, Pat.
Would anyone else have a question? You can make a statement later, but you must be respectful of this process or you are asked to leave.
Chairwoman, I think my colleague might have had some comments if we're okay to make them.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Yep, I just want to address the concerns about Porton Road. As part of the access permit and road use agreement process, there will be a study done and conditions will be put in place. For instance, if there are times of day where traffic is very high, meaning in the morning for school, I heard that school buses were mentioned and things like that. If there is a concern found by the jurisdiction, they will put in place that we will not be able to have deliveries done. So things like that will be added to the agreement to ensure that the road remains safe for everybody.
And we're happy to have that as a condition of the permit too, if you want that, delivery restriction.
That would be, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last few
The
words.
delivery restriction,
Oh,
so
the
during
delivery
peak
restriction.
traffic times on Porton Road.
Okay. Okay,
Okay, I am Tanya Braun. I am 4602 Southampton. First question is, you said we can't refuse this here, so where can we and who else do we have to contact if there is a way to prevent this? Because obviously our community isn't too enthused about it. What about the fire of this, whatever units, anything, any fire, any issue that happens, is the equipment available in Wakanda or Island Lake to put said fire out? The Illinois petition has that they're supposed to be at least 500 feet away from residents. I don't know where that petition stands right now, but if it does go through, are you gonna remove those panels and push them back another 100, 300 feet? You say it is clean energy, but I hear that there is some radiation that is produced by these panels, so could you speak to that? There's also runoff and flooding from these panels, which can cause basements to flood that have never previously flooded. Could you speak to that situation? As especially this year, we've had a lot of rain. Birds and deer in the area. This is common that these things can be, they are not threatened or endangered species, but certainly we do have a lot of cranes that are in the neighborhood. Several deer as well. How are they being protected? How long are those grazers going to be in the area? As I understand it, it doesn't give the land a rest. It actually kills the land underneath because the soil isn't receiving any sunlight. So what happens with all of that? And the compared property values that you gave us, that we said we're not going to decrease any property values, how close were they to solar farms? In what area were they? How comparable is that environmentally to where we are? Especially in Champaign, they can certainly have a lot more space than we do. And what would be the impact in the event of something catastrophic like tornadoes, especially, we're talking about emergency equipment, we're talking about these being close to our residents. That's a lot of glass and material that could be more damaging to our homes. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I wrote down most of the questions. So as far as fire, we have studies that show that fires are very unlikely in ground-mounted systems. The most solar fires that take place are in building integrated, so like on a building, and usually they're associated with an electrical issue within the building itself. So it's very unlikely. We have never seen a fire on one of our sites, on one of our ground-mounted sites. So it is very unlikely, but of course, like I talked about, emergency personnel are given trainings, they are given access. There's also constant monitoring, and there are components of the system that can detect an issue, a shortage, whatever would cause a fire, and it can shut itself down. So there are a lot of protections, and there's several codes. I'm forgetting, it's like UFL or something like that, pertaining to fire, that we have to meet, just state and federally. I think there was something about 500 feet. So would we remove panels and move them? No, I am assuming, I'm not familiar obviously with the petition you're discussing, but I would assume that we would be, as you may put it, grandfathered in. So, retrospectively, no one would have to remove panels and move them. The state statute, as the chairwoman discussed, that's in right now, has a 150-foot setback requirement. As far as radiation, a lot of electronics and things have radiation. There's very, very little on this site, and unless you want to camp out right next to our, equipment pad every single day, day and night, you would be trespassing, but you are not going to experience any measurable radiation, and especially not that higher than you do from your microwave or your phone sitting in your pocket while you're sitting here. As far as runoff, we did have comments from the Soil and Water district or team at the office, so we plan to, of course, address those before we pull a building permit. It is a condition of our permit that we obtain a stormwater permit from the county. Stormwater is a very common feature of these projects, especially during construction, but really once that vegetation that is planted beneath and surrounding the panels, we generally see an improvement actually in stormwater runoff. So it's on our radar. Our engineer, as I said, has already walked the site. It's on his radar. We don't want ponds in anyone's backyard, so we will especially make sure to ensure stormwater, erosion logs and blankets or silt fencing, whatever it may be, especially during construction. Birds and deer, of course, you know, unfortunately, as a tree hugger myself, the environment is impacted by a lot of different developments because of the habitat created from having this, the majority of the site, which is now row crop, converted to that pollinator-friendly native grassland. We are creating some more habitat and enhancing some ecosystem services on site. And of course, we will follow the, you know, the state guidelines and U.S. Fish and Wildlife guidelines that we have been provided to this day. And like I discussed, the environmental surveyor did flag that migratory bird survey to be done before construction. So we will continue working with those groups as well as Ed Collins with the Conservation District to deal with any environmental mitigation. For grazing and sunlight and things, we have not had much issue of our, you know, the prairie and the native pollinator grasses growing on our sites. The panels do shift, so they do move around, and therefore direct or indirect sunlight does hit the grass throughout the array. And I'm not sure if there was a specific question on grazing, but as we said, we're open to utilizing different agrivoltaic measures or different things on our site, either just strictly pollinator grasses and mowing or sheep grazing. Property values, I think the specific question was if the study from Cohn-Resnick, measured property values for projects in proximity. Yes, they did. I just reread the executive summary today, and they prioritized homes and residences at the closest, nearest proximity to those properties or those solar farms, so that their findings could be more significant. And they still found no measurable impact on those property values. Tornadoes, and I believe weather and destructive weather, which I know is becoming more and more of a reality. Like we said, we have a lot of remote and a lot of remote monitoring on site. So we measure weather, we measure output of our systems. We can detect if severe hail comes and damages our panels, so that we can send somebody out there and replace as needed. So there is a lot going on behind the scenes, even when we're not on site, to detect those things and to, deal with them as they come. But I have read the specs on these panels. They are incredibly strong. They can handle severe wind, severe hail. We actually have some projects, I don't know, the ones down in Florida that actually withstand some of the hurricanes down here. So this technology is incredibly resilient, but we also have that monitoring just as a backup.
And I would answer the first question that this is a state statute, and so if you want it changed, you would need to contact your state legislator. So would anyone else have questions that they would like to ask? Yes, please come up and identify yourself.
I did just want to say it's House Bill 4135.
You can talk about that in your statement.
Just wanted to let her know.
My name is Roxanne Clark. I live on 4817 South Pine Street. I live directly across from the access road. What measurement did you use? Because you're stating that any property was 150 feet. My property is 94 feet. What measurement did you use? What application did you use? And then my second question is, Horton Road is very narrow, and if you need to get into that access road, you are blocking Pine Street, which is my property and my street, and you're also blocking Horton, and every time you're gonna turn, you're gonna hit my mailbox, and who's gonna pay for that? Those are my two questions.
Thank you. So as far as measurement, we measured 150 feet from the project area, so from the fence line. We would not measure from the access road, as roads are a general reality.
I'm not saying the access road. I'm saying from my property to that is 94 feet. What measurement and how did you measure it?
Where are you located? Can you point to your residence on
We're not on there.
It's required to be measured from the fence line, so they're, the panel, the actual array area. So we're not required to measure from the driveway on the south.
I'm right here. Right here. Right here. That's 94 feet.
Not from the fence only surrounds the panels, not the road or anything else.
Okay, so getting back to her question, where's the 500 feet coming into play here?
That is for screening, so anything within 500 feet would require screening, which.
Okay, so then let's talk about semi-trucks coming into that road. You're gonna block my street, Pine Street, you're gonna block Horton, and every time they turn in and turn out, you're blocking an additional road. You're blocking Horton and my street, Pine Street.
Right, like I said, construction should only last about 6 to 10 months.
I'm sorry.
There can be delivery restrictions put on place, and we work with the county highway engineer to develop a road use agreement to address those sorts of safety concerns.
It doesn't matter how long it is, it's still there. And shame on you.
Hey, does anyone else have any questions?
I have a
Yes,
couple
sir, come
questions.
up.
My name is Mitch Jacobson. I live at 400 Horton Road. My first question is, approximately when is your start time?
We can't know that right now. We have a lot of due diligence yet to do, like the drain tile survey, like the geotech. We have to pull our building permit. We have to procure the equipment. This is all very expensive and very time-consuming things to do. This permit is really just what de-risks the project enough, as well as our interconnection agreement, to kick off some real funds and real resources on the project. But as I stated in my presentation, based on what we have experienced for turnaround times and lead times of those items, I would anticipate a summer or fall of 2025 at the earliest, but that is all a guesstimate.
Just to give us, people that live in the area, just some basic idea what we can expect anything. My other question on that is, the solar panels are going to be mounted on what? Are they going to be on concrete padding, or are they just going to be on posts that are pounded into the ground?
Just posts, yeah, steel posts, I believe, that are pounded into the ground at the appropriate depth based on our geotech analysis and surveys.
And then you said it only hooks to the only existing spot, and that's on Horton Road?
We are interconnecting to the existing lines on Horton Road.
Okay. And did anybody look at, as she mentioned before too, trying to get any access in off the Timber Trail by where the water reclamation plant is at? Because that is already an existing road that takes heavy-duty trucks going in and out of there to that waste dump plant that they have there.
So yeah, we don't have access to unless, I think it's covered by something.
Are you talking about the water plants all the way to the north?
All the way to the north, they already have that existing road in there.
It's not a part of our lease area, so it's not something that we
So
would.
it's something that you wouldn't even consider discussing with Island Lake?
It's not in our lease area, so we keep everything in the same lease agreement with the landowner.
Okay, my other question is, have you guys had any other experience building these solar farms in close proximity to homes like what we have?
Yes, I actually just sent emails to, I believe her name was Michelle. It started with an A, it was Asplund, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but we have sites in multiple states, Minnesota, Illinois, and Colorado. I sent her examples of, and the Colorado one especially is very much like this with 150, 200 feet. There are subdivisions within. So we have experience in building projects of this nature.
My next question is for the board. I had noticed on your website and the PDF, it's 267 pages of information on all of this stuff. So all of these EPA and inspections and everything else that you're talking about is already in there. So have you guys addressed that issue as to what you've seen in? Because I know basically by law, since Pritzker signed into law, that there's nothing we can do to stop it, but we can make some changes that might be a little bit more beneficial and a little more, have a little less impact on the people in the area.
We're very limited in what we can add as conditions.
Okay. have you guys had a chance to go through, and I know that's what she's been talking about too, is all of these different studies from all these different things here in the state and the county and the DNR and so on and so forth.
We'll address that. When I ask questions of staff, I'll go through all that, so you'll understand all the things that we do as a county to make sure that we can do as many things as possible to make sure natural resources are protected, neighbors are protected, you know, to the extent that we can do, that we do. We'll go through that at that point in the hearing.
Okay.
Okay, would anyone else have any questions? Yes, sir.
Dan Lazarski, 422 Windsor Lane, I'm a resident there. As I understand it, we've been talking about the road, Portland Road there a lot. You know, at different times of day, that can get very backed up, especially for left turners and stuff, you know, it's even with the traffic currently. I can't imagine with construction traffic on there. Have you guys done any proper mitigation for that? Are you gonna, is there gonna be a light there or something, a temporary light at least?
We would only operate or, you know, do any construction activities during, you know, hours of operation or whatever you want to call it, you know, allowable timeframes. We're not going to be working in the middle of the night or anything like that. There is no light proposed on site. I don't know if we ever have to use it in construction. If, you know, if we were to start at 7 or 8 a.m., I believe it would be light enough out by that time.
No, do you mean a stoplight?
Yeah, like even a temporary one.
So if the jurisdiction finds that one would be required in order to be safe, we would be obligated to include that in our
I would say there
construction
should
plan.
be some traffic control there because I'm just approaching the map. It's hard for us to get out of there. Sometimes there's a line, you know, because this is just a basic stop sign at the T intersection, right? So I know what some people are proposing this Lamphere thing. You know, you own this property, you can't just come right in here.
Why not?
Well, so, and this is the exact kind of feedback that we would want, right? And Britt had hosted the community event, and if we get approval from the jurisdiction to allow for a temporary construction access there, I think that would make a lot of sense. Because as Britt mentioned in the presentation, throughout the life of the system, so throughout the life of the operating asset, only a pickup truck 2 to 4 times a year will be accessing Portland Road in order to do our maintenance and to just do basic checks of the system. So if the community's concern is really that shortened, compacted construction timeline, we absolutely would want to ask the jurisdiction if an access off of Lamphere is more, the route, you know, no pun intended, better
Right.
to take.
Okay. Could you guys consider that? Will you consider that?
Yes, I think,
That's a main concern here is our Portland Road.
yeah, I think.
We had a wire go down once and we were delivering pizzas. We had to park on one side and go meet the guy on the other side for like half a day, you know? There's only one way in and out of there.
Yeah, I think the appropriate condition to apply to the project would be that the petitioner would be required to explore using Lamphere for a temporary construction access.
I just wanted to address this lady's concern here about this. She was trying to say, why can't you take this road up here and bring that road around by the plant and then put this piece of equipment halfway up there?
Sir, your time is up.
That's my last question. I'll wait for a comment.
And I just want to comment that, you know, we can talk about shifting things, but we just have to be aware that like changing something usually then is a domino effect and affects other parts, right? So if we were to take that road and put it along the property line, you're then removing those trees and defeating the purpose of other conversations we've had of people wanting a buffer and to eliminate the tree clearing there. So, and there's topography and other reasons for the road there too. And with the construction access too, you know, we'd have to look at easements and where exactly that could go. But if we designed it to Roberts Road, I'm just playing devil's advocate a little bit and just making a point that we'd probably have a lot of people from over there making very similar arguments and it's really unsafe, it's a busier road, et cetera, et cetera. So we just have to be mindful of that too. Like we could make a change, appease one group, but then just tick off a whole nother group. So we just have to be aware of that as well.
Okay, there's still a comment section.
Yeah, later in the hearing. Yep, I'm going to finish with the public. Anyone else in the public have a question? Okay.
I do.
Oh,
My
you
name's
do.
Joe Zines, 2918 Spruce Terrace, which is still in the county, but on the other side of town. My main concern is, with the residents that surround this, the screening aspect of the project. You have a fence surrounding the panels, but what good does it do? There's no screening to, they're able to see right through it.
Right, the purpose of the fence isn't necessarily screening, it's required per state electrical code, it's more for security and things like that. So McHenry County has a standard that if you are within 500 feet of a public right-of-way or a non-participating residence, that you are required to add screening if existing vegetation does not exist on the parcel that you are creating the project on. So you'll see the green hatched lines are where we plan to add, like that's proposed added vegetation that doesn't yet exist. And then kind of the bubbly green areas is where there's existing vegetation per of survey on our own site that will be maintained. And again, this is worst case scenario. We hope to even bring the site footprint in even more and maintain more and more of that vegetation, especially in that northeast corner. So the point of the fence is not necessarily screening, it is mostly security, and we're required to put it up per electrical code.
But one of the things I'm sure you would get a lot better reception from the public if they don't have to look at the screens, at the panels. If you got some type of fencing that's properly screened to obstruct the views, wouldn't that make a lot more sense?
It's subjective. One of the projects that I actually sent Michelle, the neighboring landowner, the other day, who lives, I believe, like right on the Southampton Drive, kind of on that curve, was actually a project that Liz, my colleague here, permitted, and as a condition, they had them put up an OPEG fence, and it sounded like a good idea at the time. They put it up, made it a condition of our permit, and as the contractors were putting it up, they had started asking, that looks awful, it looks like we live, next to a white wall, can you remove it? And we couldn't, because we were legally tied to the OPEG fencing. So we believe this mesh wire egg style fence blends into the pollinator grasses, the scenery and things, and then along with that, the areas that are lacking vegetation on our own property will have added evergreen trees. And of course, they'll take a few years to establish and things. We are required to go replace them if they die and don't establish well. And the point isn't really to never see it. Like, Joe has this land, he's owned it, his family's owned it for generations. We're not here to promise you that you'll never see that. That's just not likely or possible. So we are here to have a conversation and try to mitigate concerns. But the reality is that a lot of developments are seen, and you can't always control what people around you want to do and things like that.
Does anyone else in the public have questions? Okay, we have one more question from the board, and then we're going to take a break, and then we'll have the report from staff.
Right. I just have two quick questions. One is for staff. The site plan, as currently proposed with the building entrances and exits, it's within the purview of McDOT to make those changes if there are any needed, correct?
Horton Road is a township road, so the road use agreement would be with the township on that side. If you were going to propose a temporary construction access or something off of Roberts Road, that would be McHenry County Division of Transportation.
And that's typically done at the building permitting stage after the conditional use permit is granted, and those changes can be made if necessary from those officials.
Correct.
The other thing I wanted to ask for Liz, can you please elaborate a little bit on the ComEd study for interconnection and the current plan for interconnection and what limitations you face on this site? Like, it's my understanding that ComEd is the one that dictates where you interconnect when you send them a site proposal, and that you have very limited input as to where access roads go.
Yes, and that, so again, there is existing distribution lines on Horton Road where we are allowed to interconnect to. And from that, the poles that would be installed along what will be the access road has to be close to that point of interconnection based off of utility rules in our interconnection agreements that we'll have. So that it is required of us based off of the study and what's available on the grid.
And ComEd puts together that study for you?
ComEd does the full study.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break. At this time, I would take
All right, so
the,
let me know what.
please,
All right,
want to get back going here.
Here.
Okay, at this time, we would take the report from staff, if you would, Ms. Charlo, and then if you would also just go through all the steps the county takes to make sure that we impose the proper conditions on this.
Sure. So the subject property is zoned A1 Agricultural District. As we mentioned, it is in close proximity and directly abutting on a couple of sides to the village of Island Lake, and then is also adjacent to agricultural property within the county, as well as some mixed uses such as landscape businesses, business districts. There's a landscape business right at the corner there, so there are some mixed uses in the area. Our surrounding land use, there are multiple surrounding land uses. Here we've got what's designated as transportation, communication, utilities to the north, which is that water treatment facility, single-family residential to the north, off of Roberts Road, and then to the west and south, and also across the street off of Portland Road. For the future land use designation, the Unified Development Ordinance does designate the property for residential. So at the end of the life of the project, if agriculture is not deemed to be suitable, residential would be a direction that the county could see that property going as well. I did go out to the site, took some photos. The zoning signs are there. I did want to just point out that I did see those posted properly, and I took photos down Portland Road in both directions just to show, what the viewpoint would be for trucks exiting the site there. And then just to touch on the process, once the conditional use permit is granted, before a building permit can be issued, there are several requirements with our Department of Planning and Development that need to be complied with before a building permit can be issued and construction could begin. They are required to submit a drain tile study, a wetland delineation, the road use agreement we already discussed. The decommissioning estimate, we require an engineer to submit an estimate of the cost to decommission the entire site, and they provide a bond to the county, so if that needed to be drawn on, we would have the ability to do that. There is an emergency response plan that is required to be submitted, and we share that with the local fire district. They review that to make sure that they are satisfied with the emergency response plan. They are also trained by the personnel of the company so that they would know the different equipment that's out there. They'll get some on-site training to be prepared for any type of emergency plan out there. A stormwater management permit does get issued on all solar farms. The site would need to be in conformance with the stormwater management ordinance. And then an agricultural impact mitigation agreement from the Department of Agriculture, or an agreement with the Department of Agriculture is submitted, as Brittany mentioned, that has already been provided as part of this application. So all of those do need to be in place and meeting our requirements and regulations before we can issue a building permit for this use. I think that's all I have on this.
And if the township had any issues with the road, that would be handled during the process as well, correct?
Correct.
The township road commissioner would
Yes.
deal with that. Does any other members of the board have questions for staff regarding the report? Okay, well, at this time, then we go to comments on the part of the public. Here's your chance. You can have 3 minutes to state your comments. And I ask you to not be repetitive if possible, because we have to be out of this building at 4:30 and we'd like to vote. But, I want you to have your chance, but please don't restate the same thing someone else has stated if possible. So if you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand. I saw, okay, please come on up. Identify yourself and your address, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Aslan, 4630 Southampton Drive. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak about this topic. I recognize that the demand for clean energy is growing in McHenry County. There needs to be a balance between local and state regulations, to which I believe the County of McHenry is doing a fine job. As a resident in McHenry County, I'm grateful that our county board continually does what's good for our residents. Based on the Farm and Energy Initiative, the project we're here to discuss is required to consider the following: potential impact to neighbors, aesthetics, and environmental impacts. The sitting bill has required them to look at setback distances, heights, vegetative screening, and sound implications. I believe all of these considerations are important. As a resident of Southampton Drive, the most important topic to my family is the impact the project will have on our life and our home. I live directly behind the industrial trucking yard that you've heard so much about. Currently, there is adequate visual and sound barriers that shield my family from the unsightly and disruptive truck yard. There's a substantial tree line, which you saw on the slides, that shields my home from the disruption, unattractive trucks, noise, and dust. That natural barrier has provided the residents of Southampton Drive and their truck yard to go about our lives and our businesses very copacetically. We had almost zero contact with one another. It works for both parties. If the project removes that tree line in part or in whole, it would have devastating effects. As a resident of Southampton, I would be subjected to a decreased home value. This is a fact, not a presumption. The truck yard is unsightly. I purchased my home on Southampton Drive because of the natural landscape and the peaceful setting. My property would be instantly devalued, a cost that I should not be subjected to. I support the Clean Energy Initiative. I do not support the injurious effects that removing that tree line in part or in whole would have on me. Without project-specific conditions, the potential impact to me, my family, as a neighbor of the project is harmful. I would be remiss if I did not address the aesthetics of the project. The panels of themselves can be unattractive, and there's a potential for flare. Pivot Energy has gratefully provided examples of projects that are in close proximity, approximately 300 feet, to homes in Sonoma, Illinois, and a project in Greenwald, Minnesota. None of the projects in McHenry County have been this close to a residential area. That being said, I respectfully request that the following conditions be placed on the Pivot Energy permit. For the reasons stated above, they are as follows. First and foremost, I respectfully request that the tree line that shields the residents of Southampton Drive from the truck yard not be removed or reduced. It's a natural barrier that should remain in effect. Second, I request that Pivot Energy must place additional vegetative screening between the homes and the project. I would request that evergreen trees no less than 2 rows deep be placed for maximum vegetative screening between residential homes and the panels themselves. I wholeheartedly believe that these 2 conditions are reasonable and practical. Thank you for your time, and thank you to Pivot Energy.
Does anyone else want to make a comment? Yes, please come up front and identify yourself.
Dan Lazarski, 122 Windsor Lane, Highland Lake. I was just gonna comment that this green energy thing, Pivot Energy, they wouldn't be doing this project if it wasn't for the heavy subsidies of the federal government with their $7 trillion spending bills. That's how they are able to profit off of this, by our tax money. And, the fact that they're putting it close to residents. I look at this county map here. Southeastern McHenry County is the most populated section of the county, correct? There's, from what I understand on a website I looked at, there's 10 to 20 projects going on, possibly in McHenry County. Why do they have to put it in this residential area? Is one of my statements. And then our little neighborhood has faced numerous threats. I know there's not a good map for it. Can you put that neighborhood up on the screen? This was the Fox River Water Management Agency bought this land 30 years ago to build an enormous 40-acre, I'd call it a mine. They were gonna dredge the Fox River, dump it here. There was gonna be heavy trucks going in and out of here. And we stopped it. Then, Joe, your property was controversial when Pickett's wanted to buy from you, they wanted 8 acres, they were gonna condemn your whole property. We fought that and we helped you fight that off. They were gonna take it and dump sewage all over here. That's another thing we faced. I mean, we're continually under assault in this area. So I just respectfully would ask you to withdraw your proposal to build it there and put it somewhere out in the county in an agricultural region.
You're here.
Can I respond?
No, this is only time for them to make comments.
You could, I don't mind.
Okay, does anyone else want to make a comment? Okay. Identify yourself.
It's Janice McCulloch, at 4608 Southampton Drive. I have a question then, if I do have a problem as one of the closer people, is there somebody I call? Or I just always have sucked up? What if the noise is too loud? What if the sheep are making too much noise? Do I have anything? Yeah, if there's any issues, do I call the board? Do I call Pivot? I don't know if they're here, if they're in Colorado. Who's gonna come out and check it? I mean, it's just a regular person that's just saying, what can I do then if there's a problem? So I don't know what the answer to that.
Is that your statement?
Yep.
Does anyone else want to make a statement?
Yes. Michael Pete, 4725 Southampton. So I'm just right at the corner of Fort and Southampton there. My question to the board, does anybody live in our neighborhood?
Anybody else want to make a statement?
Yeah, Tanya Braun, 4602 Southampton. I think it's pretty clear that the neighborhood doesn't want this. We'd love to have this petition pulled. We'd love to make sure that if this is forced down our throats by the government because of our, they're taking our tax money to do so, that at very least we can prevent this impact on us as far as the screening, certainly, the noise, and be able to contact someone in the event of something catastrophic. Like if there is a flood in my basement, which has not happened in the last 18 years. So if something like that were to happen, I could definitely assume that this would be the cause. I think in general, I'd just like to say that we don't want it. We will be contacting whoever we have to contact to try and get it prevented. So it would be certainly helpful or better if it could just be withdrawn instead of having to go those additional routes. Environmental impact wise especially, we've already been told this increases, there is radiation. And if it's per panel, is how much radiation is in my phone, that's 7,500 panels of radiation shooting around, causing headache, fatigue, various other illness, and it increases the temperature, which is the one thing global warming is against. So to me, the whole clean energy and wonderfulness of these panels is sort of defeated just by the fact that it isn't having a good effect on the environment.
Okay, does anyone else have a statement? Yes, sir.
Rich Jacobson, 400 Portland Road. My neighbors bring up some very interesting points. I've been in my house since it was built for going on 29 years. And as Dan said, we've had multiple issues with companies coming out here, even with trying to make the sludge dump from the river to trying to take away the Pez's property for a waste dump over there. We've stood up and we've fought this. We moved out here because we wanted the peace and the quiet and not the headaches of having to be hand-fed or have things crammed down our throats. I would respectfully request that they would pull their permit because there is plenty of open property up here in McHenry County and in Lake County that is not going to be next to people's properties, that is not going to impact their homeowner values or anything along those lines, or even affect possibly even our water field here at Cotton Creek in Island Lake, because you're going to be butted right up to that. the impact from the overall aspect of it, yeah, green energy is fantastic as long as it's in its place, just like everything else. I think that the reasonable thing to look at is moving it out into a more open area where it's going to have less impact on the residents. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll offer the petitioner. Do you have a closing statement?
I guess I would just like to thank the board members for their time in considering another application from Pivot Energy. I hope that our presentation was informative. We have, as some pointed out, tried to go above and beyond even to this point, and we will work as hard as we can to pass off all information to our internal partners to bring this project to life. And for those of you that have my contact in the audience, feel free to utilize it in the months ahead. And for contact in the future, there will be contact information on the signage, and we encourage you to utilize that if you run into any issues. Thank you.
So at this time, we will close the hearing portion of this petition, and we will move to the voting meeting on this petition 2024-037 from Pivot Energy, request for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. We have some proposed conditions. I'll go through them. Number 1, the conditional use shall have no time limit unless the use is abandoned as specified in 16.56.030.pp.4 of the McHenry County Unified Development Ordinance. Number 2, site development shall be in substantial conformance with the site plan prepared by Pivot Energy dated July 11th, 2024. Number 3, the decommissioning plan shall be applicable in part as well as in whole. If any portion of the commercial solar energy facility ceases to perform its intended function for more than 12 consecutive months, that portion of the facility shall be decommissioned in compliance with all the terms of the decommissioning plan. Number 4, a McHenry County stormwater management permit shall be secured prior to construction. Any damaged drainage tiles shall be repaired at the expense of the petitioner and in a manner satisfactory to the Water Resources Division Manager. Number 5, a detailed landscape plan illustrating compliance with required landscape screening standards and Illinois Department of Natural Resources pollinator scorecard standards and land management practices shall be approved by the zoning enforcement officer prior to issuance of a construction/building permit. Number 6, fencing shall be provided in compliance with the National Electrical Code as applicable. The use of barbed wire is prohibited. Setting fence posts in concrete is prohibited except for gate posts and where otherwise required for stability. Number 7, recommendations made by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources in their April 16, 2024 letter to the applicants with regard to protected resources in the vicinity of the project location shall be followed. Number 8, all requirements of the McHenry County Unified Development Ordinance 16.56.030.pp as amended, subject to the State of Illinois Public Act 102-1123 and Public Act 103-0580 shall be met or exceeded unless specifically amended by this conditional use permit. Number 9, all other federal, state, and local laws shall be met. Are there any other proposed conditions?
Madam Chairman, I have 2 other conditions to propose.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Eldridge.
First, that petitioner shall be required to explore the feasibility of a construction access opposite Lanphier Road on Roberts Road, and if feasible, use that as a temporary access during the construction period.
Is there a second to the?
I'll second that.
Are we going to have discussion on each one, or are we going to do them combined?
We can discuss each one as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Eldridge.
I think that the requested condition is outside the scope of the Illinois Solar Siting Act. I think exploring it is fine for verbiage, but typically asking somebody to build two different roads, if they pull up the site plan, please. If they have to put in a temporary access road, that mitigates where they can put panels and expands the footprint where the people want to keep the trees. So I feel like demanding that we change the site plan to include non-leased space and a separate access road would expand the impermeable surfaces, prolong construction, and require them to maintain the larger footprint. I mean, she testified that this is a worst case scenario and that if they can get better panels, they will decrease the footprint of the whole project. So I would not be in favor of this condition.
Well, I need to let Mr. Eldridge speak to his motion.
I'm sorry. I've been gone for a while.
Yes, well, if I'm not proposing that they have to go over any non-leased space. I believe that a temporary construction access could be done entirely on Farm Roberts Road, entirely on leased space. I would say that it would not be feasible if they had to do it across space that wasn't leased, since the site will be torn up during construction. Having delivery off Roberts Road, I think might work better. And I'm not requiring them to do this if they feel that in terms of their project it is not feasible.
Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Cozen.
Yes. Madam Chair, it seems that I'm the one who may have shedded the light, and I support my colleague's proposal as that with so much information, literally hundreds of pages, it may be useful going forward if at least to flag the consideration in the scope of review during the permitting process. I too recognize the limit of our authority in these matters, as I recognize that it is those down in Sangamon County that sometimes control the crayons we're given. And so therefore, I would be supporting that amendment.
Is there any other discussion?
May I follow up my second?
Yes, please, Mr. Schnabel.
With the petitioner. And I'd like to invoke a technique that ComEd is using right now on Route 47 and ask her a question. When you build a temporary road.
Well, I don't think we can ask questions of petitioners right now.
I'll ask her if something would be possible then.
This is our discussion.
All right. You're right about that. It's just too provocative in my mind. For the purpose of the audience listening to our discussion, they're moving utility poles right now down Route 47 to widen the road. They build a temporary road out of timbers so as not to compact the soil apparently while they're doing that, or to provide support for their heavy vehicles in an area where there is no ground and so forth. And I was wondering if that should be a consideration just for discussion purposes, if anyone.
Is that kind of a construction access, sort of like what you're talking about?
Yeah, many times on construction sites, there's not necessarily timbers, but there's rubber padding that is used over soils to prevent the compaction as they drive trucks over it. As a matter of fact, there's a solar site under construction near my house that they're using that over what will be a vegetated area when they're done. That, as far as I'm concerned, is technical beyond the scope of this board, but certainly is something that that I would expect that their engineers would look into when they are exploring the feasibility of this or anything else that they might consider doing.
Any other, Mr. Cozen?
And since we're bringing backyard experiences, right now in Algonquin Township is a small tributary creek that runs from the sewer treatment plant across Barlena, across Nash, that is under construction right now through football fields and so forth. And there's all sorts of wonderful examples that are occurring right now in terms of temporary construction without impeding what we think will be another successful year by Lendall High. So I point to direction, as does my colleagues.
Okay, so I'm going to call for the vote. Again, this is to explore, for the petitioner to explore a temporary construction access from the leased property to Roberts Road. That be correct, Mr. Eldridge?
Yes.
I'm going to call for the vote. Mr. Eldridge?
Yes.
Ms. Gartner?
Yes.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Beverly?
No.
Mr. Jers?
No.
And I will vote yes. So this condition is approved 5-2.
My second proposed condition is there is a memorandum with suggestions dated July 24th, 2024 from the Water Resources Division that the petitioner be required to take that into consideration and where possible conform to the recommendations of the Water Resources Department.
Is there a second?
I'm not sure what that motion was. Can you repeat that?
There's a memorandum dated July 24th from the Water Resources Department. It has a number of suggestions. My motion is that the petitioner follow those recommendations to the extent feasible.
Okay.
We're going to do discussion.
Is there a second? Are you second?
I'll second, yeah.
Okay. So it's been moved by Mr. Eldridge, seconded by Ms. Gardner. Discussion, Mr. Eldridge?
Yes, it's just parallel to the condition number 7, which is recommendations from the IDNR that to the extent possible, the Water Resources memorandum be followed as well.
Ms. Gardner? You have any?
No, that's fine.
Ms. Beverly, you want?
Yeah, so the Water Resources Division is in charge of the permitting process throughout, and they have wide latitude to make these comments, but to also change them, and I would not want to approve a condition tying them to this memorandum that was not part of a formal zoning meeting or discussed with other departments. I feel like if we say you must adhere to this and there are changes that come up or things that are made different, or if they need to be more restrictive than the terms of this document, a condition restricting them to the 4 corners of this document would be damaging for the environmental safety of the project.
Any other discussion?
Could we change the motion to, instead of following their recommendations, to consider their recommendations?
They're bound by the recommendations as part of the permitting process. The Water Resources Division sets the rules and approves the permit. So this document is merely to inform the petitioner of what to expect as part of the permitting process. It is not in any way to tell them what they have to do because they will be required later.
So you're saying that this is redundant now?
This condition would be both redundant and would hamstring our county department from doing the best job that they can when they are on the site itself.
Okay, I understand.
My comments would be, I think that just for the concerns of the neighbor and the neighbors to just, this has been laid out, and on page 2 of this letter, it says, as part of the overall permitting process, the applicant will be required to submit for a stormwater management permit as it appears that the improvements will meet the ordinance threshold, and the following at a minimum will be required. And you know, that it's just laying out what they would need to have done, and I don't think it hurts anything to have that listed. I mean, the letter is not saying anything that will be, you know, overly restrictive or anything like that, so I just think it's just good to include that for the benefit of the neighbors.
Yeah, in my view, I don't think that Ms. Beverly is correct, because I don't think that this memorandum is specific enough so that incorporating it in the conditions would either limit or hamstring the department in any way. I think it is setting forth general principles which we wish to adhere to in any case. And it is perhaps somewhat redundant because she's quite correct. The stormwater permit will, with great specificity, identify the exact requirements. I think this is just a matter of setting forth the principles we wish to adhere to.
Any other discussion?
I agree with Ms. Beverly.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I'm inclined to feel that we can overkill these things sometimes.
It's redundant.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Eldridge?
Yes.
Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
No.
Ms. Beverly?
No.
Mr. Jers?
No.
And I'll vote yes, so this is 4-3 on a condition.
I think we need 5 to pass a condition as well.
Okay, so this condition fails.
I believe it fails if it's not 5.
Okay. So are there any other proposed conditions?
I have one.
Yes.
I would propose that the petitioners work with the county highway engineer for delivery limitations on Horton Road should the access road be through there.
Horton Road is a township road, county road.
Oh, okay. That is the road, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and the county highway department.
The township.
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 Whatever, some highway department.
I'll second.
Thank you.
As long as it's township.
I'm unclear, can we repeat it? I'm sorry, can you repeat the condition?
Wow, okay, I'll try.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I would like the petitioner to work with the county highway department.
Township.
Okay, I can't repeat it.
Work with the township.
Township highway department for delivery limitations if the access road is on Horton Road.
They already have control of the road. It's their road.
I'm not going to support that. It's up to the
They
highway.
already,
Yes, it is.
they already
I'm
own
doing
it.
this for
All
the
right,
sake
let's
of
just
the
go
people
down the
out there.
line.
Yeah.
Mr. Jers?
Yeah.
Discussion?
Second.
It's the township.
We don't have a second.
Mr. Eldridge?
I second
Oh,
this,
Mr. Eldridge,
yes.
second.
It is the township's road. They're not gonna allow construction or anything to happen there if it doesn't meet their township highway code, which it's paved and got shoulders and it's
I'm not saying
striped
that
and
they
it's,
can't use it.
it's a legal township road.
What I'm saying is that they should work with the township highway department to limit deliveries during certain times of the day. to
What's the
avoid-
township gonna do? They
The
probably
township will
got,
give
they
them
probably
an-
got 4 employees.
Excuse me, the township can tell them when those times are and when they should avoid using that road. That's their road, they should know.
Well, then why don't you add to it school buses and garbage refuse trucks
want
and
to get
anybody
specific.
else who uses that road?
Kim, is that an enforceable condition in your
It's
estimation
unenforceable.
with the state's attorney?
I don't know that it is. You certainly can add any conditions that we can run by the state's attorney's office before the county board votes. I tend to think that that might not be enforceable, but you certainly can try.
In order to get a road agreement with the township, would the township be able to add any restrictions that they would like without our putting any?
I believe they could because they're not bound by the same
Is
mandates
this in
that
the
we
village
are.
of Island Lake?
Not the property, no.
Is Porton Road, who polices Porton
I
Road?
believe it's the township. Should be the township. Hang on one second.
Is there a municipal police department that enforces speed limits, et cetera?
Island Lake.
No comment. Sorry.
Let me just double check.
It's already being policed.
Okay, while she's looking that up, Mr. Schnabel, do you have anything extra to add?
No, I'm just gonna say that the Township Road Commissioner has ultimate authority over all of his roads. He's going to insist that posted weight limits are obeyed, etc. And generally, he doesn't have a lot of say over a new road being installed, for example, for temporary use unless someone has to get a culvert permit. I understand the good intentions of what's trying to be done here, but I don't think it's enforceable at the township level.
The
Please,
map
no.
is showing that it's partially village and partially township, so we would need to reach out to the road districts and see who actually has jurisdiction over the
That's a
entire
different story,
stretch
though.
there. It could be village.
I brought this up
Definitely not county.
because people in the audience felt that there was a problem with Portland Road and backups and construction traffic on there, et cetera. And it was suggested by Liz, I think, to work with the whatever road district to set limitations for when deliveries can be made. I thought that was a reasonable thing to say, so this is why I brought it up.
Is there any other discussion by the board?
Well, while I have seconded this for the purposes of this discussion, I really do think that probably the best way to handle this is in discussions with the Township Road Commissioner. And the Township Road Commissioner can set times for deliveries if they feel that it's needed because of the traffic patterns on Portland Road. And I have no doubt that Pivot would follow those rules to the extent that it was possible to do so.
And this condition would just be directing them to make sure that they do that, to work with them.
Well, they have to get a permit.
Okay.
Any other discussion? I'll call for the vote.
I'm going to withdraw it because
Oh, okay.
it seems moved then.
Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn.
I move acceptance of the conditions as announced.
Bob has one.
Oh,
Excuse me.
Yes, Bob.
Sorry. I'd like to add a condition relative to the DAS weather station, specifically for the consideration of adding it to the public weather network, which is already a function that is in there. The DAS weather system is a portal maintained by the Washington State University. And by turning it into the ambient weather network, all persons in that area who are monitoring weather would be able to have access to the scientific information that is coming from that.
Is there a second?
I'll second for the purpose of discussion.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I may seem the most sensitive to weather, being in Algonquin Township in 1967. Algonquin Township suffered what is referred to as the Palm Sunday tornadoes. It was the worst string of tornadoes that ever went through the area. There are still residents on that township and to the east of the Fox River who recall that path. One of the things that saved people at the time was what was referred to as air raid sirens because of the concern of the time period we lived. People thought it was a warrant event and didn't yet call them tornado sirens. As we move forward, every piece of technology is providing us newer and better information, especially technology that is maintained almost regionally, if not nationally. The weather station, the Washington State University is maintained so that any person in this public system can dial in and get alerts for it. It is being used in aviary purposes, and it is also being used locally for weather. And that would give the kind of alert to the detail that we do not ordinarily get when weather reporting is always coming from O'Hare.
Ms. Beverly?
Well, I seconded in support of discussion. I am against this petition because it is outside the scope of the Illinois Solar Siting Act. However, I acknowledge that Pivot is a good neighbor and has done a lot of good work in the community, and perhaps they will consider this moving forward as some of their public outreach, but I don't think it's appropriate for this board at this time to approve that.
Bob, is there any cost in either connecting or maintaining the connection from their system?
No, there is not.
Okay. I'm inclined to agree with Ms. Beverly. I think it's probably a good idea, but I'm not at all sure it belongs amongst our conditions.
Discussion?
I kind of agree with Charlie on this.
I agree with Ms. Beverly.
Mr. Cozen's idea is a very nice one. but
It's a great idea,
It's
but
well outside the scope of this petition.
we don't have to make it a rule.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. And this is on the weather station. Mr. Eldridge?
No.
Ms. Gardner?
No.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
No.
Ms. Beverly?
No.
Mr. Jers?
No.
And I'll vote no, so that condition fails 1-6. All right, this time I would entertain a motion to accept the,
Madam Chairman, I move acceptance of the conditions as amended.
is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we accept these conditions. I will call for the vote. Okay, the vote on the conditions. Mr. Eldridge?
Yes.
Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Beverly?
Yes.
Mr. Jers?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes, so the conditions are approved 7-0. At this time, I would accept a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move acceptance of the petition subject to conditions.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Eldridge, seconded by Ms. Gardner. Discussion, Mr. Eldridge?
I believe that the petitioner has met the standards of the Illinois state law. I think that Pivot is one of the better petitioners we have in this regard. I understand that a great many people in the community would prefer that this not be in the location, but I think that a lot of their fears are overblown. I would ask Pivot to follow the community's desires in terms of screening to the very most that they possibly can, and in particular, screening, not removing screening between the community and the truck parking, I think is something that is going to be essential if they wish to be good neighbors. Having said that, it is the public policy of the state and the county to promote solar energy, and I believe that this has met all of the qualifications, and therefore I feel obligated under the law to support the petition.
Ms. Gardner?
I agree. I think that when I first saw the information for this petition, it was the one solar farm, I would have said no, because it's too close to homes, because it has a lot of trees that have to be removed. I want to thank Brittany and Liz for their presentation. They're very well informed. They have answers that they know we're going to ask, that you're going to ask, and they always come prepared. I do believe that Pivot is a good neighbor. And I do believe that having a solar farm in your backyard is not anybody's desire. I get that. I really do. I used to live in back of a landfill. I understand. However, as a neighbor, a solar farm is not that bad. It's pretty passive, it's quiet. You're used to looking at rows of crops, you're gonna be looking at rows of panels. Not all that different. I have to say, property values, there are studies that go both ways. Nobody really can say distinctly if property values will go up or down or stay the same. Nobody really knows. I tend to think that it's not going to change property values very much. The landfill did not change my property value at all. In any case, I would again, as I did before, encourage Pivot to be good neighbors as they seem to be. They go to every extent they can. I would contact them if I had any particular problem, and I feel confident that they're using local workers for the construction. I like the fact that they own and operate their own places, and therefore they are accessible to correct any problems. So I am in favor, even though I have no choice.
Mr. Cozen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Before taking this position, as all of us, we were subject to taking an oath, and part of that oath was the recognition of the due process. And one of the due processes to make sure that there is notice of this hearing. And there is, through this process, not only on this applicant, but on others, that there is a site sign. There is a sign that is also on adjoining properties. There is also notice in the paper, of which on more than one occasion, my wife points out to me that I have a meeting after reading the Northwest Herald. Also, there is a free notice site that the state maintains if one does not wish to visit their local library for a newspaper or wishes to subscribe, as well as McHenry County with our tax dollars maintains a notice of this site and the adjoining to it. So those items are out there for us to be active participants, and I appreciate the attendance and the comments that we have heard. One item that has been overlooked is that there are federal requirements that even govern the actions taken by us. One is known as the Federal Migratory Bird Act, which governs the flight of birds hither, yither, and yon. And these facilities are subject to them only to find that they have yet to provide a jeopardy to them, not like the windows on the McCormick Place or my patio window, notwithstanding 3 or 4 homes across the yard from me who have rooftop solar panels. Beyond that, I hope too that this applicant reaches out in the community outreach and not resort to just a monetary thank you. But there are many of the next generation technical students who will be asked to provide service for these, who will be asked to monitor this equipment when those calls come in, however they arrive at whatever call center. Additionally, that weather station is one that at least I had not a full appreciation until the last series of events from Janesville all the way into Chicago. Any number of people in their backyards contribute to what is occurring and whether or not they should begin moving things out of their basement before they should be flooded. And so I'll be supporting an applicant who has fulfilled the application and the documents submitted. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Schnabel.
I'll be supporting the petition.
Ms. Beverly.
I'll be supporting the petition in the interest of brevity. I just had a couple of points that I wanted to reiterate. The property value study is on page 152 of the PEIL document that's on our meeting portal page. I would encourage you to look at it, pay special attention to Winnebago. Rockford has multiple solar farms abutting residential areas like this, and the Winnebago assessor says that there's been no change in value. Regarding the aesthetics of being close to the truck yard, the current landowner could remove the trees without any notice or permission as it stands now. There would be no repercussion for that. The current landowner could also put up a fence and put sheep closer than 150 feet from any property line under the permissions under our A1 designation at this time. So it's really, I know that the future land designation for this is residential. The landowner testified he had tried to sell it for residential development with no interest. This will preserve the condition of the land for 30 plus years, and your neighbors will be bees and sometimes sheep. I'm in favor of this petition. Thank you.
Mr. Jers.
I'm in favor of the petition.
And I am as well. I like the fact that Pivot Energy goes above and beyond the minimum. They do a lot just to be a good neighbor. I like the fact that they're, again, donating to not-for-profit, not required of them, but they really go to great efforts to try and be a good neighbor and to try and do it right. And so I think they will take into consideration all that's brought up at this hearing, and we'll continue to work with all parties involved to make sure that this is a good project. So I'm in favor of the request. So this time I'll call for the vote. Mr. Eldridge?
Yes.
Ms. Gartner?
Yes.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Ms. Beverly?
Yes.
Mr. Jers?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. This will go to the county board with a 7-0 vote approving. At this time,